Hello and welcome to the Nash Tackle Off the Hook podcast. Just to make you aware, this podcast may contain some explicit/offensive language, and if that's not your thing, you don't have to listen, but I have given you a warning. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
You don't know the half of it, but anyway. I'm skating on the thinnest ice known to man.
He said, and they put a poison in the tank that just instantly kills them. He went and we've run out of it, so we cut their heads off with shovels.
Suddenly, bang! The whole boat exploded.
Take your sort of 8-inch long piranha and imagine that at 4, 5, maybe 6 feet.
I said, I've revived your dead fish. F off, he said. You haven't.
That was just humongous. It was... I couldn't believe what I was looking at.
I'm just battling this fish out in the pond. I know it's a black man. I'm saying I'll never be a naughty boy again.
If you catch fish and you return them to the water, then you are my brother.
Loz East, welcome to the Nash podcast, mate. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very good. How are you?
This is comfortable, mate. I might be in possibly the worst place for somebody from Leicester to be in, Nottingham, but these sofas are very comfortable, mate, so thank you for inviting me to your home.
You're very welcome. I'm just glad we can get it over the line because I'm sick of you pestering me.
Yeah, I have punished the life out of the other night. I've been, I'd say, Terry Hearn-esque in my campaign to get you on, mate. So I'm happy I've got a result. I'm going to crack the fire open, tell a tale about it in the future and milk it. Nah, but, mate, thank you for coming on.
You're more than welcome.
What have you been up to recently?
Turn of the new year. You had to get this in New Year. I knew you were going to stitch me up straight away. Let's get it out of the way now.
It's about it.
So we can be right. So I've been out on a shoot this week, obviously working for RidgeMonkey. And we've gone down to Shearwater, which is Warminster. So obviously me and the cameraman's gone down. It's a 4-hour trip. So we're down there. We're to do a job. We're to catch a few fish and obviously get home. So we've gone down there. We've made the trip 3 o'clock in the morning. No problem. He's driving, so it's fine. So obviously can of monster and whatnot like you do. And driving down then I've got a gammy toe. So we'll start with we'll start with this bit. I've got an infected toenail, so I'm on antibiotics. Not took them all Christmas because I'm like, I want to drink over, I want to enjoy myself over Christmas. So instead of doing the right thing and having it between Christmas and New Year, I'm thinking, nah, you're doing New Year. So we've got this shoot on the 2nd of January. So I've took them that morning. Anyway, I'm driving down. I said to James, the cameraman, I'm like, at some point, he's going to clear me out. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the side effects, thinking they look rough. Like we're driving down 3.5 hours into the trip. We've got to Bristol, and I'm like, I've got my feet pressed against the footwell, my hand on top, and I'm like, trying not to put my arse on the seat. I'm like, James, you're gonna have to pull over, mate. If you don't pull over now, it's going in your footwell. Like this, we're in emergency. Yeah, I knew it was going to happen. 3.5 hours into this journey.
Oh, mate.
So it gets to, anyways, there's this little garage, like back arse of nowhere. And I've said, James, this garage, pulling it. So his handbrake turned into this garage before he's even stopped. I've 007'd it out the car, out the van, and I'm in this garage. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Oh. And there's this little old woman there, bless her, and she's standing there. I says, can I use your toilet, please, darling? She says, No. Can't use my toilet. It's public use only. It's not for public use. It's not for public use. I said, darling, I really need to use it. I'm in pain. It like these antibiotics. I'm going. I'm going. So this is the last thing I want anyway. Got to a point where I'm like, I said, look, darling, I'm either going to do it on your floor in the garage, and it's going to be embarrassing for both of us, or your toilet's there. Anyways, I thought, before she gets out of that counter, I'm in. So I've gone traipsing through this garage, right? Lock the door. Gone to the toilet. I've done what, by the way, I've done what 90% of people would have done in that situation. I've not, you know what I mean? So I've gone in the toilet, locked myself in, done what I need to do. Won't flush. That's next problem. So I'm stood down, oh no, this is like New Year's resolutions. Let's start the year good. Let's start with a bang. I'm like, oh, what are we doing here? 5 o'clock. Anyways, I've come out of the toilet. She stood there, bless her. I mean, she was a nice lady in the end, bless her. And she was like, I want to make sure you've left it clean. Fair enough, left it clean, no problem. Gone out. She's like, give me the 3rd degree again. It was not for public. I'm like, look, I've done what 90% of people done. I've been respectful. I'm sorry about it. Like, I'm on antibiotics, and then she's giving me a story and whatnot. And in the end, she's like, I'll get rid of the photos now. And I'm like, oh no, what photos? She's like, I didn't know. So I got me the card. I'm sat with James. Like, oh, I feel loads better now. James, I knew it was going to happen. James like, what you don't realise is she's been out here for the last 10 minutes taking pictures of car and me.
Thank God she took pictures of the car and not you in the toilet.
So like, I'm like, anyway, she got rid of it. And so that's the first thing. Bearing in mind, we haven't even got there yet. So that's the first thing. We get there. We'll go through the gate into the next car park. James, the cameraman, I'm in car parks here, decides not to stay on the hard stuff. Like, it's pitch black. Tries to turn around, straight down the divot, into the woods. Leaf matter. It's soggy, it's boggy. We're stuck.
We've had a bit of rain recently, James.
It's flooded, like proper. So anyways, it's now 7 o'clock in the morning. We're stuck, right? Oh. Next minute, we're trying to get it out for an hour. Won't happen. I said, James, come on, let's go and get a peg. Walk round that way side of shearwater. I've been tipped off with a couple of pegs that you'd want to be in.
Yeah.
They're not free. They're all taken. There's matchmen there, everything by this point. So now I'm looking at the opposite side of the dam wall. That's where I need to be. By that point, 4 guys have turned up to tarmac the dam wall. Didn't know anything about it. So we can't get across. I mean, we can't get out anyway, but we can't get across. So shout him down. Can you give us a hand? Can you give us a push? James gets in the car. There's me, four big lads, tarmac guys, trying to push this van. We get to the top, James decides we can't go anymore, puts his brakes on, one guy slips on bonnet, bang, head, teeth, right? So he's now going crazy, and I'm like, mate, so sorry about this. James has gone bright red, don't know what to do. They've pissed off back to down wall, and I'm like, right, he's pissing it down. We're wet through. We've got the car stuck. I've nearly been arrested for trespassing. We can't get any decent pegs. And then Simon, bless him, our other cameraman, turns up, and there's another car park other side of the damn wall. So now I've got split cameramen, and I can't get to the other side of the damn wall. So anyways, we got across the damn wall. Sweet talk the tarmac guys, you know what it is, you know what I mean? Cheers, lads, thank you very much. Anyways, we get across. Before that, I've managed to sort of move James through these trees. We've got 2 front tyres onto the hard bit, and we're out these woods 2.5 hours later. Right, so we get to the other side. Gets to the pegs. Moral of the story is 30 mile an hour crosswinds. We're wet through. We fished all day. Luckily, we spent a couple of hours, caught a few fish, did what was there to do, and got blown off the lake because it went from a 35 mile an hour gust to 55 mile an hour gales. And the trees around Shearwater, it's the first time I've been there, but the trees are huge.
Yeah.
This tree's falling on top of the van. They've hit James, cameraman, on Edding Lake. They've hit me stuff on down the bank. So we've had to abandon shoot. So we've done 9 hours round trip. And on the way back, we've called into this lovely services. Farm services, dead expensive, posh, really nice, proper. And there's this coffee machine. I'm looking at it thinking, that looks nice. Hot chocolate. Like we've had a bad start to the year. Let's chill out and get my foot on dashboard and have hot chocolate away. Right? So I bought this hot chocolate, £6 it cost. I'm like,
£6?
Yeah, farm shops. Like, anyways, I think that looks nice. So I've gone, paid for it. Boop, cheers, mate. It wasn't until 5 minutes back up the M1, I sit there and think, where's my hot chocolate? I've only left it on the counter inside. So I'm now giving the bloke behind the counter free hot chocolate.
You didn't go back for it?
We was on the M1, you can't turn around.
You're not a true Nottingham patriot, are you, mate? You'd have been right back there.
Having all of that lot, the day from hell, was just... That's one of the shoots, mate, that I thought, no more, right off, start again. 9 hour round trip, all that hassle in between. If we hadn't caught anything...
How many you caught? A few though, didn't you?
Caught 7 in a couple of hours.
Lincoln.
But if we hadn't have done that, it would have been all like worth nothing. Do you know what I mean?
The irony of that is when people see that video, it'll be lovely, polished and edited, and won't have all that story.
Yeah, they won't even realise the like traumatic experience that we've had. Horrendous. But the moral of the story is these shoots, when you see them, don't always run smooth. Like especially when you've got a couple of mates in the car going down there early in the morning. So
antibiotics.
Mate, honestly, antibiotics. But yeah, so that was the recent shoot. So that's what I've been up to, mate. And then I find myself sat talking to you.
If this podcast ends abruptly, it's because he's had to go to the toilet. But there is one. No, mate. To be fair, incredible. When I heard that over the phone, I was like, brilliant. That's a perfect start to a new year. But you caught them, so that's the main thing, isn't it?
Job done.
And you are synonymous with catching them. I think. We are going to talk day tickets, but when I was talking to you about this, because obviously you've been publicly fishing, as in out there putting content out, your Instagram, etc., for a long time, you caught a load. And I think over recent times, the sort of day ticket persona and you being able to go to pretty much any venue and get a result, the tactic series last year for RidgeMonkey, various things like that, but even before that, has always been sort of shown to the public eye. But when I was planning this with you and talking through your angling chapters, the versatility and the amount of angling you've done of different regards, big fish target fishing as well as day ticket stuff, that shocked me, and we're going to talk about all those different aspects now. The first thing, I'm a fellow Midlands man, probably from a slightly better side of the Midlands. We'll get that out there early again. But this area ain't necessarily synonymous with carp fishing. There ain't a great deal. There might be more so in more recent times, but sort of historically, it's quite matchy generally. Mm-hmm. Where did your sort of entrance into the carp world come from, being from this locality, mate?
So, obviously, starting from day dot, I think it's 22 years I've been fishing, 21 years carp fishing now. So, I guess it all started from my old man. I think I was 9 years old. And I can't go into too much about the details of the venues because the non-publicity. But basically started on a non-publicity water. And that's where I stayed for at least the first 5 years. But initially, my dad took me on the Trent. Like, he'd done the big carp scene, like back in the 90s, the 2000s. He'd moved on to sort of fishing the Trent and everything like that, fishing for barbel and other species. So at this point, he's fishing the Trent, and obviously me being a young nipper, he said, let's go on the Trent, we've got the best chance of catching, blah, blah, blah. So we've gone on the Trent. First trip, we've had a 13-pound barbel, first fish. Like, bearing in mind, we're talking, I don't know when, so we're talking 22 years ago now.
Yeah,
like
it's a big one.
Long time, like, start of the 2000s. So that was the stretch record back then. Like, first fish, first barbel, stretch record. Thank you very much, 9 years old, off a trot. So anyway, we've caught these. And you know how it is. There's obviously a lot of stuff out there at the time. You watch videos and you see the carp fishing side of it. So I'm only young at this point. And I said, Dad, I want to go carp fishing. And I could tell in his voice, he's like trying to swerve me away from it because he knows. He knows how difficult it is, the time it takes. And he wanted me, I think if I asked him now, he probably wanted to try and get me down a different path to start with. I know a lot of people start with catching little tiddlers, whip fishing, the match fishing side. But for me, it was on the Trent. So I'd done a little bit on the Trent to start with. And eventually he took me carp fishing. And I remember being on this lake and there's these fish swimming up and down the margin. It's the height of summer. It's red hot. And they're in the edge and he's feeding them. And I can see these carp. So you can imagine a 9-year-old like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, before that, I've only seen them on telly or goldfish in a shocking bowl. So I've seen these fish and I'm like, wow, like, this is insane. And I remember at the time he hadn't got any floats, he got nothing. And then he made this little float out of, it must have been like a swan's like feather or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but I remember him lowering it down with this little thing on top and watching it. And 5 minutes later, obviously, massive explosion. That's gone under. And I'm into my first ever carp at that age. And like, from the moment, although he probably wanted me to like barbel fight hard, but this was another, this lit something inside me that started this whole thing. And ever from that moment, it was like, sorry, Dad, carp fishing. So for the first 5 or 6 years, he religiously, like, not made me, that's the wrong word. Like, I was going out with friends, doing a bit of fishing in there. But when I went with him, it was, this is how you do it. This is how you do your rigs, fish care. This is how you look after him, spotting. So what I'm trying to get at is, I wouldn't be sat here today if it wasn't for that man. Like, my respect and my appreciation to him and having him there, because I realise not everybody has that. Everyone has different backgrounds.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be sat here. So he's made me do that. I've learnt my sort of carp etiquette, so to speak, from somebody who'd been around the scene for a long time. And got to 16, got my car, started doing my first nights.
Yeah.
Joined, well, at that point, I've said to him, look, these lakes, I've caught what's in them now. Feel like I'm on to the next step. He said, right, next couple of years, we'll go to the Dart Park, if you want to call it that, from around here. We all know where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's been on the podcast before. So I spent 2 or 3 years on there as a 16-year-old lad with some of the best anglers from around this area. And they've helped me along, as well as my dad. So that's now I'm at the point where I've caught a few from there. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was 16.
Caught a few from there?
I caught a few over 3 years. Like, the first year on there, it took me 4 months to get a bite.
Yeah.
I mean, I was 16, I was raw. You got to remember, I'd gone from these little tiny venues, catching carp, to something that was well out of my reach. But I had my dad by my side, because I was 16, I was learning. So I spent a few years on there. That's where I've learnt my trade. And then that's when the sponsored angler side comes into it. And obviously with your car, you've got more freedom. So you start going here with your mates, you start going there with your mates.
Yeah.
Then you get to a point where you can only learn so much from someone. So then you go somewhere else and you take a bit of information from him. Then you get closer to this guy, you take a bit of information from him. And that's when you start building up your experience, you building up sort of how you look at carp fishing, and you go from one style of angling where you're catching them one way to another style of angling. And I've always done that. I've always been a sponge with people, like the people who I'm close to. Like, for example, I met Brian Garner on a venue. Obviously, Brian's very well known within the industry, very experienced, and he's always been sort of I don't want to say a mentor, but someone who's always kept me on that straight and narrow to say, that's what you should be doing, that's what you shouldn't be doing. Like, and he's always been there to give me advice.
Consistently. Like, we still speak now. I've known him over 10 years now. We still speak now most weeks. So I surrounded myself with good people who helped me. So that's where it started, really. And then we moved on to the venues around here, because to some people listening to this, some of these venues probably won't mean much because they're from around this area. Yeah. Whereas if it was from Essex and around that sort of area or down south, you had your Raisberries, you had your, everywhere, your Yatelys and whatnot. But up here, we obviously had Bleasby. So my dad was taking me there from when, I think the council owned it or something. It's 20 quid a year for a ticket. Jeez. Never carp fished it. My dad did. I never carp fished it. I went for a day's tench fishing with him. Yeah. But we're talking, I was 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Through that time, occasionally he took me there, and the history behind that place at that time didn't have many carp in it. Like, I wouldn't like to say how many, 60, 70 carp, something like that, originals that were there at the time. And until it got took over, it was granite, like really hard, lots of history, some very good anglers fishing it. And in the back of my mind, that picture was always there. So when I got to a point where I got my car, I thought, that's the place I want to go. It's got something in me. That place has a piece of me. Yeah. So it got took over. The syndicate got took over. It got stocked. So consequently now there is more fish in it. The lake's got de-snagged. So it's turned into a lovely little syndicate. So I thought, that's perfect. Perfect for me now. It's safe. It's the next step into development sort of thing and your experience. So I've joined Bleasby. In the back of my mind, it's got all these new stock fish in it. It's not the easiest venue. If you haven't dealt with a weedy venue before, bearing in mind it's top to bottom, harsh, it's not the easiest place to fish. So luckily I'd got the experience from what I'd done with my dad on the park. Yeah, I was going to say
I could take that through to this. Yeah. But from that days only fishing on the park to this syndicate fishing, building a bigger picture, again, it was all new to me. So although there was a lot of fish in there, in my head I always thought, there's still a few of them originals left. Do you know what I mean? Like that was, although it wasn't specifically target fishing, I wanted one of them because I wanted my own slice of history. I wanted to say, this is the venue that, for me, has that piece of me that I will always cherish. And I've caught this from it. And although it probably didn't have as much meaning anymore, granted, because there was a lot more fish in it. Yeah, it was a different lake. And I had to go through the fish to get to that opportunity. Yeah. That first year, like, I think it was only 20, 21. Like, I did 22 nights and had 44 fish out the main lake, jeez, including a couple of the originals and one of them lump on the right. I mean, we're talking this fish was 50, 60 years old. It was just over 30 pounds, little melted fins, a real slice of like Nottinghamshire and Midlands history. And at that point there, that's what got me as well. Like, do you know what I mean? That was my...
Yeah, that's your Raisberry, that's your Yateley, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that, from up here. So at that point, that's where I started thinking to myself, this is for me, this. You know what I mean? I love this.
It's a straight, like, obviously there's the sort of textbook tale of like, dad takes young lad, float rod, catch some roach, catch some perch, catch some bream, catch some tench, go to carp. It's a bit like that, but there seems to be quite an early onset of sort of, if you like, proper carping. You referenced there the Dark Park, mate. Mm-hmm. As a place, Gary Aitken and various other people that have been on the podcast have talked about it. As a place, it's synonymous with a lot of carp anglers throughout the course of the country, especially sort of locally to here. The sort of the carpiness, the prestige, the difficulty of that venue, to go onto there, even under your dad's guidance or without your dad's guidance, at that age, in your sort of formative part of your carp fishing, and catch a few, albeit it took a long period of time. That is a very, like, tough grounding. You ain't going through the sort of match ponds and getting loads of bites and sort of going through that standard progression. That's a lot of like not a lot happening. Maybe seeing and maybe refining some skills, but essentially your buzzers ain't going off.
No.
Why do you think that the sort of passion, if you like, that you had was enough to sort of keep you through all that? Or was it a case of like, I don't know, because I just think nowadays if I put somebody too early on a venue like that, let's say, and they didn't catch fish, I don't think they'd stick it out. Do you think it was always in you to sort of that, I don't know, to enjoy that?
Put it this way, I remember one evening, the first day I caught my first fish.
Yeah.
I remember, because obviously you're allowed in at sort of...
At days only, you're allowed early, yeah.
So I remember my dad coming into my bedroom, I'm laid there and like, Loz, get up. Bear in mind I'd done 4 months blanket, I'm 16 years old. Like, get up, school holidays. I think it was about September at that time. And he said to me, get up, come on, we need to go. And I'm like, nah, I'm done. Can't do it anymore. Yeah. Like you would, like anybody wouldn't. Like, I'd had enough. No, come on, you push through, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, all right, okay. So I've twinkled along on that session. And I had a carp. I think this particular carp does well over £40 now, as in the past. But yeah, it was around the £30 mark. That was my first fish. It was my PB at the time. And it's weird because that 4 month of blanking like went out the window.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'd went through a long spell of not catching anything, of it being mentally sort of exhausting as well as physically, to a point where I'm like this is too much for me. I can do this. And I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't tear it up at all. Like, I was 16 years old. It was different back then. You had the same people fishing it. Yep. It wasn't so like well known about. It was a different time. I was young. I didn't catch loads. I think in the end, you know, if I had 10 fish through the 3 years, but the days only a few months at a time. That's all I had. So I didn't light it up for any, but that was my experience of proper carp fishing, learning. And you got to remember as well, like to have the tackle to do that. Again, I have to say to my old man, I mean, I bought my own stuff at that point. Like, I was on work experience earning money, so I bought my own tackle. But before that, luckily he borrowed my stuff, and some people aren't like to be in that situation. Not everybody's privileged to do that. So I understand that. So I'm very fortunate in that, like, which is why I'm very grateful to him. I probably don't always show that to him, bless him, but I am really appreciative for what he did for me. Yeah. And that really did set me onto the path of, I knew then that carp fishing was for me. What aspect of carp fishing I wanted to do, or what I enjoyed, that came along at a later stage, or what I wanted to do, like the sponsored angler side of things. Yeah, that'll come at a later stage. But for me, that was at that point that I knew that fishing was in my blood, carp fishing was in my blood, and looking forward into the future, I knew no matter what happened, even if I had a break for a period of time, I'd probably always fish. So that was when I was hooked, if you want to say.
Do you think that would have been, I don't know, make or break? If it went the other way and you did 2 or 3 more months and nothing happened, do you think that would have been carp fishing done for you? You got something else?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You think you'd have stuck it out?
Even though I've ended up back on Trent for the Barbel, I'd have done something. It was in me at that point. It was in me because what I haven't said is prior to being 9 years old, my dad had always took me fishing like a day here, a few hours there, here, there, and there. I can remember going all the time. I've got photos from when I was 2, 3 years old, sat on the bank with him. Yeah. And I'll always remember, Dad, I want to go home. Dad, I don't like this, I want to go home cold. Got nothing to do. But I tell you what happened was, when I got to 9, my mate down the bottom of the street, we always just played darts, table tennis, whatever else. And one day he said to me, I can't come out tomorrow, Loz. Like, I'm going fishing with my granddad. Yeah. And I remember thinking, I've got nothing to do. So it was at that point I said to my dad, I'm going fishing tomorrow, Dad. So again, if it hadn't been for him saying I'm going fishing with my granddad, I wouldn't have got my dad to take me and it wouldn't have happened. So
yeah, there's a lot. I'm often like I think back and think there's a lot of coincidence and things that fall into place that are meant to be put you where you're meant to be. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's a prime example, especially on a water that sort of prestigious. I know later it probably came and grew in grandeur in terms of respect, but to go onto there at an early age, catch a few, have the persistence, and like you say, it sort of galvanised the rest of your path, if you like. Talk to me about sort of tactics in those early sort of days. Obviously, you were gleaming a lot off your dad, other anglers that you met along the way, but sort of that 16, 17, 18, life gets a bit mad, but also in terms of the timescale, there's a lot of social media, more media influences on you. Where were you sort of tactically, gear-wise? What were we looking at in that picture of Loz East?
I remember having my apprenticeship, I think it was in the NHS at the time, So I got a little bit of money coming in, this, that and the other. I remember I had the big Daiwa Infinities, the bait runners. I bought 2 of them. I bought 2 Century NGs, £3.5.
Oh, good
so,
boy.
Exactly. So I'd spent, this was my own money at this point. So I'd spent a bit, and that's what I took onto the park. Because, I mean, people that have listened to podcasts before or read articles about the place now will know some of it is a lot long range casting.
Yeah.
And the sort of situation you're fishing is very weedy, it's testing. So you needed something. I couldn't go on there with the little Shimano bait runners that I had.
Yeah.
You know, and the 2.5 pound test curve rods, it just wasn't up to it. So that's the gear I had. And rig wise, I guess I was going through an experimental phase at that point. Like you said, I was seeing a lot more.
Yeah.
But from what I'd already learned, just normal sort of leg clip systems or helicopter systems with 6-inch braided hook links, a little tiny shot under the hook and a pop up. It was like, I wish we could go back to them times sometimes. Like
they were the days,
mate. That was me back then, you know, and baiting with, you know, Dad was using mainline at the time, so we was just baiting with boilies, and that's how simple and easy fishing was. So it wasn't till after that you go to different venues and you start experimenting with this, and I guess we'll come to solid bags at one point in the future that, like, again, there's a coincidence to why that played a massive part in my fishing. Like you said, everything has a coincidence, and things happen that move you on and progress you on into being a better angler.
Were you one of those at the time where you had like significant people or people within the industry or influences that you followed, or did you very much sort of like do your thing, maybe meet people along the way and get influenced, or weren't really fussed about sort of that I don't know, not hero worship ain't the right word, but a lot of people talk about the influences of Terry's writing, a lot of influences of Rod Hutchinson, a lot. Do you know what I mean? Was there anybody sort of pinnacle that you looked up to?
I guess obviously my old man. That was without saying. And at that time, we had the guys who were fishing the park. I looked up to them like they were heroes. And then the things that you had on telly, like you had Thinking Tackle on Sky Sports, so you saw Dan on there a lot.
Yeah.
So looking at that, I did think. I mean, I never dreamed of being in the position I am now. But looking at you, think, wow, like. I'd love to. You know what I mean? Like you grow up, and I'm guessing these anglers, like most anglers out there now, thinking, "Wow, I'd love to be in that position." Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so it was. Wouldn't say it was a dream, but it was almost in the back of my head as an aspiration all the time, thinking, "Yeah, I'd love to be in that position." Do you know what I mean?
Take me back to Bleasby, mate. You referenced there the old lump on the right, the fish that sort of was significant, that was your piece of like history, if you like, and you wanted to go on there. Tactically on there, you talked about the new stock coming in. How were you fishing it? You obviously went through quite a few fish in a short period of time, did really well, and then eventually had that, so played the numbers game, if you like. But what were the winning formula on there for you at that time?
So that time I'd found the multi-rig.
Oh, yes.
Like pop-up wise, size 4 curve, little tiny pink pop-ups. The rules had changed on Bleasby throughout my time there, but to start with, you were allowed sort of leg core helicopter system, so that's what I was using, or a leg clip system. The spots were really small, and again, that first year back then when the syndicate first opened, it wasn't as busy and as popular because the new stock had gone in, they weren't as big, so it wasn't as popular. So what I was able to do, because I was still working Monday to Friday at that point, so I was able to go down on, I think I was doing a Tuesday or Wednesday night, find where the fish were, or in a general area where the fish were, rake a spot for an hour or so. Like I wasn't trying to polish it, just trying to make it presentable.
Yeah.
And then filling it in. I was using good old Vitalin at the time. Jeez. Cheap as chips. Like you got to remember, I'm still young. Going to a pet shop, 15 kilo sack, taking it dry to the lake, mixing it when I'm there, and putting a bucket of that in. So by the time I got there on Friday evenings after work, because it wasn't busy, the spot was primed. I knew the spot. I knew the wraps. It had bait in. 9 times out of 10.
Wraps at this point.
It was at wraps then, yeah.
God,
it was at wraps then.
Wraps then.
So like the multi's over the top, bit more bait, and just did really exceptionally well at that time. You know, probably fishing beyond my means. Like partly was luck with how busy the lakes were, you know, but on the flip side, I felt like I was doing it right. And again, being able to take that information of what I've done there. So that's the first time I've pre-baited as well at 20, 21 years old. So again, that sets you up for the future because you've learnt from it. You know what to do. You know what works. And again, you can use that throughout your years moving forward on other places as well. So Bleasby for me, again, taught me a hell of a lot. I'm not choosing somewhere, like I said, I'm not saying it's the hardest place to get a bite from, like far from it, but you have to fish it correctly with the right gear to catch them, because the situation and is so difficult with the weed.
Yeah, mate. And I think, like you say, that those venues, as much as they don't maybe have a wide significance, there's always those venues, I think, local to you, wherever you're from, that have more meaning because of that exact nature. Is personal to you for some instance. So I think, we're not, no one's going to discredit that in terms of your development and what that meant to you. You're fishing from that point, so you're obviously working, you've obviously established yourself as wanting to angle, you're working it around your sort of working schedule. Was it then a case of different venues? Was it a case of then going into sort of targeting places, looking at places, wanting to be sort of known, if you like, or developing that sponsored angler role or lead into it? Where did your angling sort of take you from there? Because clearly, between the ages of 16, 18 into 20s, partying, everything else comes into play. A lot of people fall out and come back in. You consistently carried on. You started working, and you're now, like, if you like, a lifelong angler. What course do you take from there, mate?
I guess looking back at it now, I just wanted to catch carp. Didn't care where I went, what I did. And the sponsored angler's role was coming like more and more apparent now. I'm not going to sit here and say that's for everybody. It's not. But at the time, I was that kid who wanted to be in that position, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So again, apart from going to different venues, I was like, I think I'd made my first trip to Linear back then, and I'd got my car, so I was going with mates. We'd gone here, there, and everywhere. At that point, it was very much learning and development, but I didn't know it was that at that point. So at this point, I'm very much like just enjoying my carp fishing, wherever it'd take me. So I think over the next couple of years, I dropped out of Bleasby, joined it again, done a few day tickets one year, rejoined it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've rejoined Bleasby over the last 10 years, just to go back and reminisce more than anything. Not because, you know, the fish are one thing, but just to say I've got a ticket because I love the place, but that's another story. But the sponsored angler's role was very much coming to the forefront more and more. And then obviously I was fortunate enough that Corda gave me an opportunity. So I joined them for a few years, developed on from there.
How does that all come about? Because, like, I mean, you get it. Everybody probably gets it that works in the industry that's fortunate enough to. You get messages saying, how do I get into the industry? How do I do this? You're talking there very much about a role and a time where there's a lot of change, a lot of development. I mean, my job role probably wouldn't have existed. It was coming in. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot of sort of, with social media, the ability, if you like, to be able to work within the industry, maybe just fishing, but also social media, etc.
Yep.
How do you go from clearly loving your carp fishing, enjoying it, travelling around lots of different places, to having the opportunity to work for a brand? How does that come about for you?
Knowing the right people and having that slice of luck that everybody needs. So somebody knows you that knows somebody within the industry. Because you've got to remember, from around this area, at that time, we're talking 10, 15, 20 years ago, when I started, not a lot happened from up here, from around this area. So up north, there was a lot more. And down south, that's where obviously carp fishing was. So around this sort of area, I didn't have any contacts in the industry whatsoever, but I knew people from tackle shops who were in the trade, who knew other people who worked for companies, and word got round that sort of way. And I just got a slice. Look, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I was the best angler in the world by any stretch of the imagination. I was a young buck, you know, likely to make mistakes along the way, just enjoying his carp fishing, you know, and I was just given an opportunity at that time, which I'm very grateful and fortunate for. And that's where it progressed for 4 or 5 years. And then, but within that time, there was a lot there, you know. I wrote for Carp World magazine for 2 years doing the Discovering Day Ticket series. So again, Bev took me on to do that. And that's where the day ticket side of things really did come into its own. That's where it started, if you like, because I was not forced to, but that's what I had to do to write for Bev. So Bev gave me an opportunity to write for Carp World again, which, you know, I'm really grateful to her for.
She's ringing you
part of
up?
the story. Yeah, she's just like, look, I've heard. She knew me anyway. I'd met her a couple of times at the shows. We'd spoke a bit. She'd heard about me because obviously, like, Corda opened a lot of doors.
Yeah.
So she rang me up and said, I've got this piece. I think you'd be great for it. Do you want it? I said, yeah, I'll take any opportunity I can get. Like, I just love my carp fishing. I'll go and do it. So at that point, I'm still working Monday to Friday. Bev's given me, just to let you know, I've got, you need to write 3,000 word article each month.
Quite a lot, mate.
You need to take your own 15 images, and you got to go somewhere different every month. And ideally, you need to catch. So I'm like, oh God, like again, I've bitten off more than I can chew. I'm working full time. I've got lakes that I'm on. So like, I think at the time I was on Monk's Pit, and I've started to dabble in with a few people, like tutorials, helping a few people out locally. So I've got a lot going on at this point. I'm like traveling that M1 or wherever I was going on a Friday night after work, stuck in traffic for 3 or 4 hours, getting to these day ticket lakes I had no clue about.
Yeah.
Having to fish and catch. Bearing in mind, this isn't just April, January, like throughout the summer months and the spring, like, which is ideal. I'm talking through October, November, December, January, February, like hard times as well. So again, as part of a learning curve, doing that set me up, because by giving me the confidence to go to these lakes, like, you know, I'm not the type of person to sit and blow smoke. Like, I'm just not that type of person. But at the 22 years of doing it, 24 different articles, I was fortunate enough to only blank on the last one that I did. Went back the next day and put it right, because although she'd said catching was a must, because obviously you can't have a magazine article without a fish in it. Like,
No.
Do you know what I mean? So I always put that pressure on myself to, even if it was only one, to catch, because like I said, turning up Friday evening at these day ticket venues that I knew nothing about, which on a Friday night, dark, often, having to write the 3,000 words.
Did you write it there and then?
I didn't write it there. I made notes in my phone of
right
significant parts. Take my own photography, so then I'm learning about how to take a magazine style shot, what they're looking for, what they want, using a DSLR camera, getting the best angles, again, which set me up for where I am now, and sending them in. That was tough. Like, I'm not even going to lie, that was one of, along with tactics, the hardest things I've ever had to do. Not because the fishing was difficult, because of the situation around it and how busy it was, and quite often the case was I couldn't blank because I'd got no more time. Like, I'd got 4 weekends in a month. I'd got all these other sort of obligations that I had to do. And often I'd got the one session each month to get it done. And if I blanked, it either meant taking time off work, which I didn't want to do because I've got my own family life that I want to choose manual leave for, or I'd have to try and like move my stuff around and scrape somewhere that's a little bit easier, which for cartwheels you don't want to do. You know, you want to show your best.
Well, that's the thing. You don't want to go to Drayton or somewhere with no disrespect to Drayton, but you don't want to go to an absolute runswater if you're writing for carp.
No. Like the place that went to Cromwell up here in December. I'd never been there before. That was tough. Sandhurst and like some of these venues that I've gone to. I mean, I'm very fortunate and privileged to have gone and done it and fished it. And I'm very happy with, you know, they're upstairs now, all in a row, all 24 magazines, you know, and I look at that and I think that's something to be proud of, you know. I'm happy with it.
Mate, it's impressive. But even there, before you got into the carp world writing, obviously you break, if you like, with Corda. There is a real sort of, I don't know, a real sort of ethos around moving to different places, venturing here, there and everywhere fishing. You seem to see a lot of people that will sort of spend their time on maybe one or two venues. Bleasby, let's say, they might have stayed there and carried on fishing it and kept going. Whereas you've always seemed to have that natural sort of instinct to sort of spread your wings, go everywhere, maybe not consistently stay on the same venue, but move to another one, go and experience something else. And that has clearly not only helped you in terms of your angling experiences, venue stuff, but also latterly, in terms of the whole day ticket thing, lends you perfectly towards going to a new day ticket complex that you've not seen and getting a result.
Yeah. I've never been one to stay on somewhere. Like, I understand the campaign side of things when you want a specific fish, that's what people do.
Yeah.
I've never, apart from Bleasby in those early days, like where I'd got no commitments at home.
Yeah.
And I was a young lad, and I knew, because what you've got to remember here is, it's not necessarily the amount of days you do each week that's the key. So whether you do 2 nights or 4 nights, yes, 4 nights helps, but it's the consistency that you can go. So long as you can go week in, week out, so 1 night a week, even if it's 1 night a week, 1 night a week, so you got 4 but individual weeks, It's having the time and in the back of your mind knowing that you can commit to that's needed. So 2 nights a week, every week, is what you need to be able to do that. And with my life and how it was with everything, I've never been able to do it. So for certainly the last 5 or 6 years, like I can probably count on one hand the amount of times I've actually gone each week. So I've gone to that syndicate on that time, and I've gone to that syndicate again the next week. I can count on one hand in 5 or 6 years the amount of times I've done that. So I've always been somewhere different every week, and it's difficult to do one particular style of angling when you're doing that. Because, say for instance, I wanted to target an individual carp. It's not something I do because my life I haven't got that time to do that.
Yeah, you know what it takes, and you're not willing to. I know exactly what you're saying in that regard. I can empathise with that, especially with sort of family life and keeping that balance, which is always in this game can be a bit of a struggle. You talked there about the different tactics, the variety, being able to turn up to a place. For you, if you were given the choice and you were given the freedom to do it, would you, if it was work orientated and obviously not imposing on the rest of your life, you're in a different situation now to when we talked about it before, but would you go and fish completely conversely the other way and sit on one venue to target one fish? Or would you always, given the choice, go and experience lots of different places for short periods of time?
It would depend on the fish. The fish would have to spark something inside. That's the first thing. And I like variety. I'm not going to lie. Don't get me wrong. If there was a certain fish that I wanted to do, I knew I'd had the time to do it, and the spark was there, no problem. Like I would go 110% into that, but it's about that commitment of having that time to do that. But for me personally, I just haven't got that. Like that, it's never really like an individual fish has never really bothered me. Which at some points we're going to talk about things where I've gone and done that, and I have caught some like significant fish, but the variety's always done it for me. Like I don't know what I think because I've always done it. And sitting on a place week in, week out, year on, year out, I take my hat off to the lads that do it because that requires a certain dedication and commitment as well as, what we do requires a certain sort of dedication and commitment. So I take my hat off to that. So if I had the choice, yes, I would, but I would still incorporate going to other places as well because I've always had places on bucket lists that I wanted to go like, like Horseshoe, for example. A couple of years ago, I always wanted to go to Horseshoe, not necessarily because like they've got the biggest fish in the world, but the history behind it. I wanted to catch an original out there, so I had a couple of trips, caught an original at Horseshoe. So there's things that I want to do in my own angling and look at, as to at the end of it, whenever I stop, whether that's the day I'm 6 foot under or whether that's something else stops that, I want to be able to sit there and say, well, I fish the places I want to fish. I've caught the fish that I'm happy with.
Yeah,
I've done what I loved. And so long as I can do that, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, mate, it's interesting. It's akin it to a sort of a different mindset. A mindset is a buzzword. Everybody uses it around sort of carp fishing in the scene, but it's a massively important factor. And it's definitely a unique type of mindset. I know Al's similar. He does what he needs to do, if you like, and then moves on and likes flitting around. It's not flitting around in the sense of like, you know what I mean? You want to do that. It's what keeps you infused. But it's a certain mindset, a certain angler that has not only the sort of the drive to be able to do that and experience new venues, but also the ability to be able to get a result in that period of time, whether it's to catch an original from Horseshoe, whether it's to catch a 30-pounder from here, whether it's just to get a bite. But it's interesting that it's it's definitely something I've seen in a fair few anglers, but it adds to a very sort of capable, I don't know, quite a multi-dimensional type of angler, I think, because you're always chopping and changing and have to be efficient in doing that.
Yeah, it's a mindset because every lake presents different problems. Like, and don't get me wrong, there has been times over the last couple of years where I've sat there and thought, please take me to a syndicate where I can concentrate, I can get something going, I can build a bigger picture, I can keep in touch with it. But I've always had that thing inside of me, and work has mainly done that. Like, fortunate to be in the position I am now with everything, and the things I've done has always dragged me back to fishing here, there, and everywhere. And that's not for everybody. Like, and the big fishing, like, ultimately we all go carp fishing for different reasons, and this is the path that it's taken me on. But I feel that by doing that, I've visited that many different venues now, and I've been and caught fish from where I wanted to catch, and I've got the experience from fishing those venues that even if they're only one-off sessions, I've been there, I've caught.
Yeah.
I could tick it off the list. Like, and by doing that, like, I guess we'll go into tactics at some point, but that mindset of coming back and not being able to put all your stuff away, knowing that all you've got to do on the following week is put all that stuff back in, and your rods are set up, you've got your bait, you've got bait in the lake waiting for you that's working for you where you've pre-baited on your spots.
Yeah.
You can check the weather. I couldn't do that. Like, that hasn't been possible for me for the last at least 5 years, you know, because I have been going somewhere different every time. That's not possible to do. So what people probably haven't seen moving into the next role is the dedication and the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Type of fishing.
I want to talk about the converse to exactly what we've talked about on the flip side, mate. People know you as day tickets. We're going to go down the day ticket route. We're going to talk about all that. There are instances in your life where you have gone the opposite, targeted individual fish because you wanted to catch that fish for whatever reason. Talk to me about those instances and why you think you had that sort of complete shift, if you like, in your angling.
So I guess Monk's Pit was the first one, like big fish circuit water, like been on the scene a long time. So that one wasn't necessarily targeting individual fish, but it was targeting fish that had a little bit of history. Like some big names had gone and fished there. It was in the history books. People knew about it. And it was at a time where I didn't have a lot of time, but I felt like I had enough time knowing what that lake was about to put my stamp on it and get what I want from it, because I'm very much the type of person that if I can't commit to it 110%, I won't put myself in the position to do that. I need to know in the back of my mind that I've got what it takes in terms of time and I'm mentally right to go and achieve that. So I knew at that point that Monk's Pit was, again, probably sounds blasé, and I know some people have struggled. It wasn't going to be granite one fish a year fishing. I knew that once I got it right and I worked it out, I'd be able to get bites. And I think in the couple of years that I was on there, I had 19 sessions spaced. The first year I did 16. Second year I might have done 3, maybe 4 sessions. So it was very split, and it wasn't consecutive. It was turning up fishing. I might have a couple of weeks off back, might have a month off back, and then stringing a few together towards the end of the year, the first year. But very quickly worked out that they like bait. Very quickly worked out that the swims of where they wanted to be in certain weather conditions. And then I knew that I didn't need to be there all the time. Like, some lakes you need to be there, you need to be keeping an eye on, you need to be keeping your feet on the ground with it, listening to what's happening on the great, like, there's things you need to do, and that wasn't one of those places. So at that particular time, that suited me, because I knew I could go away, do what I had to do with Carp World, tuitions, filming, whatever it may be, and I knew I could go back in a month's time and everything would be the same, so I could turn up and catch.
How did you unlock that then? Because obviously there's a load of different factors. Monk's Pit, there's a lot of big fish. You said they like bait. That's probably commonly known. But being able to predict where those fish are going to be in quite a pressured environment, because a lot of anglers on there, mate. Yeah. As you say, the who's who have fished it because of the stock. How did you crack that? Because they're the keys, aren't they, mate? Let's face it. I know this is different because you're going to the same place, or you've got a reference point, you're going to go back there. But being able to know where the fish are before you turn up infinitely makes the venue a lot easier to sort of crack, rather than sort of having to go every time and go, well, I've got to go and find them first, then I haven't got that swim because someone's in there, I've got a slot. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Monk's is pretty nice because it's got a shallow end and a deep end. Just imagine it as a rectangle. One end you've got 20 foot, 22 foot right up the top in the swamp, and a no fishing bank that patrols one end, and down at the car park end you've got anything from 6 to 8 foot. And the two things that made it difficult were, like you said, the angling pressure. Yeah. There was a lot of people on there. So you had to drop fortune on your days of when and what swims were available, and that's part of it. The second part of it was the kelp. I mean, the kelp was as thick as my quad, like from top to bottom. Like, so that made it, that was another problem that I'd never experienced. Like, there's one thing of it being weedy and dealing with what I'd already got experience from being young, to this kelp weed that I never had to deal with before. Like, and using boats was another thing. You're allowed on boat, and I'd never done that before. We will get into a story again. I'm full of them. This one was particularly funny and gutting at the same time. Oh no, nothing to do with that this time, luckily. But Monk started off really well. So first trip I went down, it was, I can't remember when the ticket started properly. Let's say March. It was still cold, no leaves on the trees or anything like that. And I had a 37 mirror and I had a fish called the special one, which at the time was £20 maybe. I mean, I've said I've joined this for the big. I don't know any individual fish. It's not until I've got there.
Oh, right, so you haven't.
I haven't picked out any. I've gone there because I know that it's got plenty of big fish in it. I don't necessarily know every single stock of it because I'm not interested. I just want to go and catch. No, I don't. I want to go and enjoy myself and enjoy my fishing.
Yeah.
And know that if it goes, there's a chance of a big one. So I've caught 37. I've caught this one known as. I didn't know it was a special one until afterwards, but I kind of knew it was different when you got on the bank. Jet black across its back, bright orange underneath its belly.
Oh, yeah, I've seen this.
Different gravy, and I kind of knew at that point. So I've done that first trip, buzzing. New syndicate, 2 fish, first trip. Thank you very much.
What'd you go in with? How'd you start?
So hybrid, and again doing research, which becomes apparent. I do a lot of this, like a real lot of research. So I knew that hybrid from mainland had killed that lake for 2-3 years beforehand. People pumped it in,
right,
and they were tuned onto it. So that was the first thing. Second thing is I went in with rigs that I already had confidence in. Like, I'm not starting somewhere new, chopping and changing, thinking, oh, he's catching loads on that, I'll do that. Like, I went in with what I knew and what I was confident in, that if we got a bite, I knew I was going to land it. So I think at the time it was leg clips, 8-inch braided coated hook link, size 4 curve, blowback style, a little bit of silicone on the shank of the hook, a little bit of shrink tube to curve it, and then sliding a tiny little mesh bag of pellets down the hook link just to cover the hook. Very simple, very easy. Little tiny hybrid dumbbells, topped off with pink. Again, I'd been sort of done a bit of research, figured out pink works well on there. So that's what I went in with. 3 of them dumbbells, topping with pink. And I think I put 6 bombs out on an area that I'd found, 60, 70 yards. And I had the 37 the first morning, the special one the second morning. And it went on from there. So automatically when you do that, not only does your confidence go through the roof that you can catch from here, like regardless of how many fish are in it, but you know that your rigs work.
Yeah.
You now unlocked a combination with hook bait that at that moment in time is working for you. You know that your bait's working. So automatically now, those pieces of the jigsaw that on some venues might take you a little while to work out have unlocked relatively quickly. So now turning up to my second session, I knew that there wasn't a lot to change on there. You know, I just went in with the exact same thing. And the third session, I think the second session I landed a little, I think it was about 17, 18 pound. Very cold again. It was snowing and hailing when we were there.
Nice.
The third session is when I had my first sort of bigot, let's say. And when I say bigot, I mean 6 or 7 fish. It's not massive, but for me at that time, I felt like I'd done well. So I had the special one again. Again, second time in like 3 trips. Like, don't know how it's happened. Completely different. Same rig, same bait, just
What's
a different
the total
bag.
stock in there?
It's got a lot of big fish. I think you're talking well over 130 pounders.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of big fish. I couldn't tell you because I'm not interested. I know, exactly.
Same area, same swim?
Same area, next swim down, but fishing a completely different bit of water.
Right.
Same rig, same bait, everything. So I've caught that again. This time it looks in even better condition. Like, it is, like, I'm talking 6 weeks later, now it's jet black, like to the point where you can hardly recognise it. It's incredible. So I've caught that again, and I had 6 fish that trip to over £30.
Nice.
And at that point, then I've got 2 swims. I know the spots, I know the bait's working, I know the rig's working, and all of a sudden now you're thinking one of these big ones is going to drop at some point. You know, I'm 6, 7, 8, 9 fish in 3 trips, and I'm like, a big one's going to drop, because that's what I joined for. I joined to catch a few of the real big ones. That's often what I do. Like, I'll pick a venue that I know holds, you know, quite a large number of big fish.
Yeah.
You know, over 130s in there. And I won't target a specific carp. I'll just fish, enjoy my fishing, like enjoy my time on there, and whatever comes. If I catch 2 or 3 of the big ones, that's me, I'm happy. You know, there isn't one that I think, oh, I'd love to catch that, because I've done that on places like Trent View. Like, Trent View's well known for having a large stock of carp, which it has. Like, but in that volume of water and that depth of water, and Trent View trying to single out a carp, which I've tried to do for the last 8 years for one particular carp, and I've gone through a lot of fish on there now in that time, it's never going to happen. Like, you've got 1 in 2,000 chance in a volume of water, and I only fish it 2 or 3 times a year. It's not going to happen. Like, there's too much. So I knew going into Monks, that was a similar situation. It's quite often, which I found out later on in my angling, that the lower the stock, the easier it is to pick out, because all right, you might go through blanks and periods of time where you don't catch anything, but the numbers are in your favour. So if you fish a lake that's got a low stock, you know that at some point, the one you want's turning up, all you've got to do is keep catching.
Yeah.
You haven't got to go through the numbers game. So Monks was one of them. So we're now moving into that fourth trip on Monks, and this is where it went bad. So I've turned up, and it's busy. And there's a swim directly next to a car park called the car park, funnily enough. And Monks, like we've mentioned already, has got boats on it.
Yeah.
So, and I've got in this swim, the wind's hacking down there, and I've seen one show, and I'm like, thank you very much. Like,
done.
But down the shallow end, like I mentioned, the kelp's bad. So it's up to, so I knew already that if I was to hook something, chances I was going out in the boat to land it. So I've set up that night. I've only used 2 rods. So 2 rods are on this spot. I've got 1 rod hooked up because it was quite a tight swim. I didn't want to put any more pressure in the swim than what was needed. It was busy.
What, you fishing firm, clean spot, yeah?
Yeah, in between the kelp, just some nice soft stuff. It wasn't too blatant, and there was no other weed on it. It was almost like it was gravel covered in a bit of silt or sand.
Okay.
So I was fishing in that, and about 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I've seen this fish show, or I've heard it, and then I've seen it because it's come out twice. Next thing, it's only 2-3 foot of water. And so I've got this third rung hanging up and like, oh, that's it then. I've hooked a little bag of pellets on and swung it out, dropped it. Within 10 minutes, it's gone, 27 common. So I should mention at this point that the boat I've got in my swim's like a pissing bathtub. Like,
yeah.
And I'm not the smallest lad in the world. And round the other side of the lake, some of the boats, I'm like, and I'm not the best in the boat because this is my first year using them. You know what's coming. So I'm doing the self-takes of this 27 common. One of the main spots rod's gone while I'm doing it. So I've had to zip it back up, safely put it back in the water, make sure it's all right before I've picked the rod up. As I've picked the rod up, it's already stuck in the kelp.
Yeah.
So I've got in this boat. So I've got my life jacket on. I made the schoolboy error of not distributing my weight properly. Stood. Arse end at boat's gone up. Oh. So now, imagine boat's above me. I've gone back. Boat's on top of me.
Oh,
right?
No.
Rod's in lake somewhere. Right, and it's about 5 o'clock in the morning at this point, and I've got out. I've had to pull the boat out in anger. I'm looking around the lake like that. Oh, please don't anybody be up and watching this. This has got...
They'd have heard that, surely.
Disaster written all over it. Anyway, so I've got in the boat properly. I'm dripping, head to toe. I'm talking, I was covered. Right, so I've got in the boat. I've got the rod. I've got my life jacket on. Going out there, I'm thinking, where's my shocking Crocs gone? So as I'm winding out, mate, 20 yard out, one pops up.
Yes.
I grabbed that one. Another 10 yard, another pops up. Thank you. So now I've got my Crocs on. So now I'm out in this lake, mate, dripping head to toe. And I'm looking round, spinning round with this fish thinking, please don't anybody be looking at this. It's so embarrassing.
Nodsville.
It's so embarrassing. Anyway, playing this fish, up pops this fish. To this day, I still think it was porky. Like, porky used to be £50 in there. That was the big one in there. And it was the only one with a 2-tone, like, down its side. I've seen it. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. It's where you are. I've got it in the boat. It's flanked. I've seen it. It's massive. In my head, it could only be that fish. And I remember it's gone. And I've gone to net it. Its head's up. It's gulping.
Oh.
I've stuck the net under it. And it's getting one of them. You know, as it does, but backwards. And all I've seen is the size 4 curve go, bing, straight over my shoulder. And as it's like that, sinking, I've gone to net it. But as I've gone to scoop under its arse, instead of flopping in, it's flopped over the net cord.
Oh, so you had...
I didn't even land
some of it in it.
I had most of it in it, apart from... So anyways, so I'm sat in the middle of Monks, 5 o'clock in the morning, wet through, embarrassed, and I've potentially...
Lost the biggest fish in the lake.
Lost the biggest fish in the lake.
Would you have claimed that fish if you'd have netted it, mate, and it come off the hook? I don't know where things stand on that. You're 100%
yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, to be like, you're taking that all day long for what it is.
You're from Nottingham, mate. If it was jigged in the side,
if it was up to his tail, it can't.
Mate, that is savage, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to make it even worse, 6 or 8 weeks later, Porky died as well. Like, got caught a couple of times, then died. So that went. But obviously, in that situation, Monks has got loads of big fish, and when one dies, another one takes his place. You often see it. Another one comes flying through the ranks. And now that lake's got some ridiculous big fish in it still. So,
mad.
And I was fortunate enough for that campaign to finish on quite a few 40s. I had Charlie's mate at £48. I had the Northern Linear, which is just an absolutely insane fish. I had it twice at just over £40. And yeah, I had a really, considering the time I did on it, which wasn't a lot. And again, if you string them 16 sessions together, it may have been more. because you build the picture, you get the consistency, you know where the fish are at certain times, but they were broken sessions. So at the end of that campaign, I sat there and, I was happy with what I was caught, and, it's time to move on.
It's interesting because even there, you're spending a concerted amount of time on one venue for you, because normally you're off here, there and everywhere. But still, there is that mindset of just getting a bite, and the bigger will come. The bigger fish, the sort of Northern Lynn, Charlie's Mate, those type of fish, nothing different done. No different spots, no fishing on moon phases, no looking at form or where they might have come from or when they've come from. Just fishing the numbers game all the time is the key to getting those bites. Nothing additional.
There was a couple of different changes. So it could become apparent very quickly that the little 12mm salty squid upbaits from Mainline, I don't know whether it was because everyone started using them, everyone's going to catch them if that's all they're using. That quickly become apparent that they were very good hook baits on there that did a lot of damage. So that was one change. The second change was to solid bags. So at this point, before I got onto solid bags, because at the minute, people now know me, it's only a solid bag.
Yeah.
I've heard it all before. So before that, I used to think I used to catch a lot of fish, or I used to catch my fair share of fish using D-rigs, pop-up rigs, multi-rigs that served me well in the previous years. It wasn't until I got on these things that things changed. Now, that might be down to venue because a lot of them were day ticket, but I quickly found out that this stereotype of solid bags catches small fish and it's only good on runs waters was blown out the water. And what happened was I filmed with John Kneebone from Mainline at Linear, and he come down and said, look, we're filming for the carp project. Your section's on pellets. I'm like, no worries, like a little bag of pellets down milkling like I was doing. Away we go. And he's like, no, I want you to use solid bags. And I sat there and we're like, John, I've used them when I was about 16 experimenting. Like, I tied these bags up, they're like fucking wet tea bags flying through the air. Like, I got them 200 yards. You'd like
floating.
Mate, it was horrendous. Honestly, them Tetley's tea bags in there look worse than, honestly, they were horrific. So anyways, I've made these. That session, I've had like 20 odd fish or something like that, like to over 35 pound. And at that point, I'm sat there thinking, I might have made a mistake here. Maybe I should have got on these earlier. So I've then took them somewhere else, and I'm still doing this day ticket series. So I've took them here, they've worked. I've took them there, they've worked. I've took them there, they've worked. And it quickly become like, there's no game changer in carp fishing, but for me personally, my style of angling and what I was doing on these venues, the venues I was having to go to, this was a game changer for me because I was doubling what I was catching beforehand. Like whether I was using them as single, spotting over them, I think that if you can fish them effectively and correctly.
Why do you think that is?
Because, I just think that's small parcel of food, mate.
If you can do that with a short hook length.
It's not the same. Honestly, my mindset used to be, you put a solid bag next to my little PVA mesh bag, and there's no difference. I can tell you, there is a lot of difference. A hell of a lot of difference.
Do you think it's the inline lead and the leading arrangement as well?
The leading arrangement helps. How your rig is presented inside that bag helps. The fact that you can pretty much 90% of the time cast them anywhere and be fishing. You won't chuck anything into thickweed anyway, but other than that, you're fishing. You've always got bait around your hook bait, and you'll be surprised in those small bags how many mouthfuls you actually get out of them, because people think one bite tactic, one mouthful, give them what they want. I've watched them numerous times, certainly on Bleasby in the edge feeding on solid bags, and even those small ones, I've had it where they've took 4 or 5 mouthfuls of that bag content, which is all the pellet, left my hook bait, and on the 6th mouthful, then I've had the bite. So when people think they're a one bite, even the small bags, can you imagine if you're using the big bags? There is actually a lot of bait inside those bags, and I think the concentration of the area of bait and having that much bait there with a rig inside it that's effective with an inline lead, you can think your mesh bag's the same. It isn't. And I've been there myself because I had that mindset.
Do you think, I don't know, I've seen it where like they come in, especially in the edge, but they come in, I suppose they behave differently in the edge than they do out in the pond, and that bag can be just absolutely blown to absolute smithereens, especially big uns, mate. They waft it everywhere. But as you say, I suppose over the course of however long you're fishing, tactic against tactic, you've seen firsthand the effectiveness of them, and obviously you've become not synonymous with them, you do more than that, but you know what I mean, it's become a key part of your armoury. For you on Monks, did you make any allowances with regards to bigger fish for your solid bags? Did you make sure the lead came off, for example? I don't know.
I was dropping my lead on there.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, unless you're in that kelp, once you're in the deeper water, there was no need to. But in my mind, I didn't want to. I've already had a hiccup. I don't want to risk losing another big fish for any other reason.
Mate.
So I've been getting rid of my lead at this point.
That's the stuff of nightmares, isn't it? A 50-pounder and a short hook length and an inline lead. That's the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah, I mean, a super sharp hook and a good hook hold. Generally, you're not having any problems. But I didn't want to take the risk regardless of whether I fall down or not. So what I did do at this point is I'd started off on sort of 3.5 inch hook links. And having watched the fish feed on them, it became quickly apparent that your small little double figure commons and 20-pounders were flying down, snapping at it. You were catching them, no problem. But the bigger fish, on a couple of occasions, actually sat there and watch from like 6 inches away from hook bait. I'm seeing my hook link extending. Bigger fish, can't get it in. And the way they feed, they've got a bigger gut. And I started lengthening it to 5.5, 6 inch, which to some people must sound alien. But the minute I changed to 5.5 inches, game changer. It was almost if they had enough rope now to hang themselves. I was still catching the 20s and the doubles, but the bigger fish were having enough rope to hang themselves. So I found that between 5 and 6 inch is, for me,
long.
The perfect length now for a solid bag. It's inside a solid bag anyway, so you're never going to get tangles.
Oh, no.
You're placing it nice and neatly inside one of them, and it's always going to be presented for you. So by giving yourself more rope to hang them, I mean, maybe it doesn't, but from my observations and what I've experienced with them, and I've caught enough fish on them now to know that is the ultimate length for me.
So that's the standard length for you now.
For
if
me
you've got
now,
a bucket tied up, they're 5.5, 6 inches.
Anywhere they go. I mean, I don't do that, but if I did, 5.5 inches would be the length that I tie them at. And when I went on monks, 12mm salty squid wafters, solid bags, there was no nuisance fish. There was no bream, there was no tench, there was no roach. I wasn't fishing extreme range. All these things, when you're choosing what presentation to use, have to come in effect. So, you know, if you've got lakes dominated by them, I wouldn't suggest solid bags. But if you've got a lake that has no nuisance fish or very little, and you're not fishing extreme range, I don't think there's a presentation out there that you can use which will catch more carp. Whether you want to fish over bait, over a spread of boilies, as a single, over spod mix, I don't think there's a presentation out there because you guarantee presentation all the time. You've always got a small parcel of attraction around your hook bait. You know you're never tangled. You can do a little trickery with them. You can add oils, liquids in the winter. As long as you dry them right, you can use casters, maggots, PVA-friendly hemp. So you open the door up to being more versatile and using things inside bags that maybe other people don't normally put inside the bags. So the effectiveness and the versatility of them and having the correct rig inside them, I don't think there's a better presentation out there, personally.
You fish a pop-up in them?
No, never. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have in the past, and I'm not saying it's wrong. People will catch enough fish on pop-ups in them. But from what I've seen and what I've used, I've always been a bottom bait or wafter man inside my bags. I can't get my head around having that small little tight parcel of bait and then a great big 2-inch pop-up above it.
Yeah. When
they're flying down and having the pellets, like having that waft, people catch on them, and I have. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying I think wafters are more effective. And when I first started with them, using that little blowback rig, so I've done nothing wrong changed nothing mechanically in my rig. So the long braided hook link with the 8-inch hook link with the supple bit on the hook, blowback style, I took that into my solid bags. That's how I started. And again, this is experience from Monk's Pit. There was a couple of occasions where I'd wake up, rods were tight, I'd wake up, bobbin had dropped, I'd wind down, leads come off, silicons blew back up, where clearly had been done. So there was a couple of occasions where and it wasn't until after Monks where I started using the slip D inside the solid bags with either a size 6 beat point or a size 4 curve. I'll tell you what, I'll never use another rig in all my life again. Like
what, inside a bag?
Or even normal rigs now. I use slip Ds consistently most of the time if I'm using wafters or bottom baits, because the hook to landfish ratio on them. Now, I'm not saying they don't get done. Like every rig gets done, like for a fact. But what I'm saying is, when I hook a carp, the chances of losing it are a lot more than landing it, because I went through a stage where I had nearly 100 fish, 100 bites, without losing a single fish on that solid bag rig with the slip D. And the hook holds weren't nicking in the top net, nicking in the corner, falling out in the net. I'm talking nail, bottom lip, or just to the side or an inch back every single time. And I could pull as hard as I want, and I know full well the confidence is there that I'm going to land that fish. So the solid bags and the rig change over the last 3 to 4 years as a whole have been a game changer for me. Because
what prompted that change to the slip D arrangement then?
One, Monk's Pit. got done 3 or 4 times.
And you changed that?
And I changed that, stopped it instantly. I didn't have any more of those dropbacks winding in lead gone. Now, I'm not saying that rig didn't get done out there, but certainly didn't have the lead coming off, obviously done. And I was never 100% happy with those rigs. Now, those rigs work, no doubt about it, people catching up fish on them. But when I was landing fish on them, the hook was coming out in the net. Like, I was landing them, no problem, but almost as if the hook wasn't penetrating properly. And I just wasn't 100% happy with it, you know? Yeah. Like, and don't get me wrong, I saw that rig on YouTube, like probably most people do, and thought, you know, I've never tried it before, but I'll give it a go. And like at Trent View, I gave it a go first trip, and I think the odds were stupid. I think I had about 44 fish and landed 43 of them. Like, and I just thought, right, that's it. Like,
but that's your confidence factor, and you just got to do it, and then you see it, and then you're done, ain't you? I think there's always those moments. But like, yeah, it's interesting that the old solid bags, big fish venue, proper big fish venue as well amongst pit, caught a few, made a change based on hook holds. It's just good angling, mate, isn't it? Really, there's no two ways about it. Some people sort of stickers and just carry on, but when you have those instances to learn from them, you don't want to lose another one. For example, I think that is top angling. The solid bags. Before we move on, for you talked about they've obviously been synonymous with yourself and a massive part of your angling. I said pre-tie load in a bag. You don't do that. You don't pre-tie them. Why not?
One, because I've got that quick at tying them now. I've done that many. Okay. I can do them there and then. And for me, unless you're using a plastic hook bait, like one, you can't put liquids in them. Like, so you've got a dried out bag of pellets there. And if you're not using a plastic on that hook bait, in my head, if you've got a wafter in there, how much moisture are those pellets taking out of that hook bait if they're sat in there for weeks, months on end?
Yeah.
So by the time you come to get that bag in there, you might not be fishing with a wafter anymore. You might be fishing with a pop-up.
Yeah.
Because you can't check it. So, and you can't put liquids in it because the PVA will go all soggy and it won't be as compact as when you chucked it. So if you can tie a bag like 60 seconds, 90 seconds, you know, what you're putting in is fresh, it's there ready to go. By the time you've looped them on, which is going to take you 30 seconds, say, by the time you fiddle about, for an extra minute.
Do it, no retard? No,
I'll just do it. I do it.
What about when you're on a hit, you've had an infinite amount of big hits. When you're like...
Still don't do it.
You don't have one pre-tied.
Don't get me wrong, I have done it in the past, like a long time ago, and there is no doubting that it is quick and easy, and a lot of people do it. I'm not doubting that. But for me personally, I just feel that I can make a bag as quick as loop to looping them on.
That's done my head.
You know? And you know what you're putting in there is as fresh as what it can be going out, and I know that everything's perfect. Because if you tie a bag weeks before and you're using a slip D, for example, or you're using a normal hair rig, when you've positioned your hook bait, you don't always look like, when you're doing it fast and you've not got time, how do you know that hair's not tangled around that hook? And if that's in that bag for weeks on end and you've cast it out and you don't know that hair's tangled, and then you lose a fish at the net because your hair's been tangled and the presentation weren't set right.
He's a proper thinker.
So
this boy.
At least when I know I've dropped that rig in there and I've watched it go down, I know that in my head I've got to be, every time that rod goes out, I've got to be sat behind rods that are fishing 100%.
Right. Here's a scenario. You're at Linear, right? You're absolutely blapping them on B2, let's say, right? It's black with them. You're catching them on solid bags. You're doing a bit of filming. There's a bit of a break in the filming, whatever. You know you're not going to get a rod out for a bit. You've got 2 rods that you're fishing, if you like, just 2 rods that you're fishing out on the spot. You are not going to whip up a load of spares and put them in a bucket. You're going to fish those 2 rods with the rigs on and retie a bag every time it comes in.
Yeah, I did tactics there in May.
You're a madman.
I did tactics there in May with Charlie Hayes, one of the sponsored anglers, with Fish B2, and I had 36 fish, something like that. And I was using bags. I didn't once tie a fresh bag. Like, people, this is probably going to blow people's mind. Like, why aren't you tying bags? It's a lot quicker. I do it all the time. Fine, no problem. But me in general, I'd rather know that when I'm casting out there, that bag's fresh, everything's in it perfectly. It's just a mindset thing. That's all it is. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying anything's wrong. But for me, in my head, I need to know, especially like on that particular session, you can't spod maggots in Linear, but you can put them inside PVA. So at that time, I'm putting maggots, and you can't do that pre-tying.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't, and I need to know that everything is bang on, because there's a lot of big fish about it these days, and all those 1% make a difference. The small things.
It's irrelevant about the maggots, because regardless, even if it was pellets, that freshness, and as you say, that sort of conscientiousness, you would do that. You wouldn't pre-time, would you?
No. But again, it's a personal thing. And like I said, there's a lot of the good lads out there, certainly on the match scene, that do time and have no problems.
How'd you load
personal. Again, this blows people. Like, people come on a tuition with me and like they expect this fandango.
I'm getting one free.
Incredible. It's incredible, right? And I don't, like, honestly. So I'll put a layer of ground bait in the bottom first. I've always done that. Okay, so
ground bait?
Ground stick mix, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so it doesn't really matter.
Like the old Van Den Eyed Black Roach.
Literally
out,
white crumb, right? So it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's powder. That serves a couple of purposes. One, if you drop your rigging and hook bait in, there's a little bit of moisture. It stops it from melting the bottom of the bag. If it has done that when you cast, it stops your lead penetrating out the bottom. And the most important thing about it is you can really tuck the corners in. So I don't know if you've tried it, but if you put pellets in the corners, or you've got a really fine stick mix, you can push those corners in a lot tighter than what you can do if you've got little air pockets with pellet.
Yeah.
Like, and the other thing is that ground bait's going in dry. You can imagine what it's going to do when that bag melts. It's going to go through the water layers. So I've had it time, like no end of times where I've had a bite with him 60 seconds on a bag as soon as it's melted, where I think it's to do with the oil, the liquid you're putting in, the ground bait dry going up through the water column. It's catching the eye. It's giving him a scent trail to go down to it.
Yeah.
And you're not only working the bottom then, and you've got a bag of pellets just bursting open. You've got a layer of ground bait that's working the water column for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that serves a couple of purposes. After that, I've dried my lead and my hook bait again in that stick mix. So now I know that it's bone dry. Again, it's great to have there. So I've dropped my lead in, dropped my rig in. The only thing I'm looking for is to make sure that slip D isn't tangled. If that slip D
drop your lead in, drop your rig in. What
don't
you
even worry about it.
We just whack it in.
Genuinely, you've got to remember, like the amount of times
you can't give it the big in about being sure and then just whack it all in on top of some ground bait.
What I mean is twisting of the slip D. So long as that, because what you've got to remember is when that bag's at the bottom and it melts, with a critically balanced up bait, that's going to always nestle to where it wants to be. So if you've spent 10 minutes faffing about, nicking into a corner of a bag, making sure it's perfect, or so long as you know it's right and it's in just at the bottom of the ground bait, it's going to end up in the same place. And by the time, like you've said, big carp waft bait everywhere, so it's going to be in the same position.
You put your lead in and then just whack your hook bait in at the same point.
Ground bait, little layer of ground bait.
Yeah.
Drop my rig in. Make sure the D's not tangled. Make sure it's flat.
Yeah.
Drop your lead in for now.
Yeah.
Drop your pellets in.
Yeah.
Up to halfway. Then lift the lead out.
Okay.
So I know now that my hook bait is managed between a layer of pellets and a layer of ground bait and it's sound. I tap that layer of pellet and ground bait down with the lead. So that's compact. So at this point now, I'll add maggots, cast if I want to, boilie crumb, and I know that hook point isn't masked. So I'm not overcomplicating it, worrying about it too much. But so long as the rig is presented 100% effective when it bursts, which I know that hook's going to be, and nothing can mask the point of the hook, the rest of the bag now, the next main thing for me is getting that lead dead centre of the bag, so it flies right. If you don't get that lead dead centre, it'll wobble. Certainly on a long cast, like I know some lads put the lead at the back, hook bait at the front. It's brilliant up to a certain range, because otherwise, any further than that, and it starts to wobble. So I always make sure that my lead is bang in the centre of the bag, fill it up 3/4, twist, tap, compact, tie off. Tape is another massive edge.
Yes,
like licking and sticking, you just won't get the same compactness, if you like, as what you will do with tape, because every revolution of that tape that you go back up towards a bag is pushing air out and pushing air out. Once you've done that, I'll cut the corners off the bag. Okay, and what that's going to do is when you lick and stick that ground bait in, you're going to see a little bit of the ground bait and the rest of the air shoot out the corner of the bag.
Yeah.
And you're going to see that both sides. So again, you're working on the compactness of it and how it's going to be. Little stab in the middle, making sure you don't hit your hook link. Just to let a little bit of air out. Add your liquids or whatever you do. Double bag if there's a little bit of moisture in the air. But yeah, going back to the rig, I'm paranoid about it, but I'm paranoid about it being sat there effective when it opens up in terms of the rig is sat presented, as opposed to worrying about which corner it's in, because by the time everything's hit the bottom and that rig's been wafting about, you've spent a little bit of time making it nice and pretty for the last 5 minutes. You miscast, you got to tie it again. Big carp comes in and swims and mooks it. It's the same. So why spend the time, unnecessary time? You know?
I think casting stability is a big one. I mean, that if you're saying, and you've got experience probably fishing longer range more consistently than I have with them, I think that's the biggest faff with them, isn't it? Is the fact that you know what I mean? We're all quite meticulous in terms of it's got to be right on the spot, the right cast. And with solid bags, they're one of those where like it can be absolutely bang on for like 75% of the distance to the spot, and then a little bit of a crosswind or a little wobble, and you think, oh, and it's so easy if you have to retie one for me just to go, it's fishing anyway, innit?
Yeah.
Just leave it.
To be fair, anything over 100 yard with a solid bag is a long way. I don't care what anybody says. It is a long,
with accuracy,
long way.
Yeah.
So for me, I'll use bags up to 100 yard, 25, 26 wraps. Anything after that, I will change to a different rig because of the ease of casting. Don't get me wrong, I've punched them further.
Yeah.
I'm not the best. I can sit here and honestly say I'm not the best caster in the world.
Yeah.
I can fish at a suitable range, but for me, it's more hassle than it's worth trying to get them bags out there at that distance. But anything up to 100 yards with no nuisance fish, I don't think you can beat the effectiveness of them. They've certainly, in fact, I know they've definitely changed my fishing. And once, you'll know you're a carp angler, once you get those 2 or 3 rigs in your armoury that you've got the utmost confidence in, you see it with everybody. It's evident when you watch all the YouTube videos, which rigs people like. That's half the battle, because in my mind, 3 things make up carp fishing. Like the fundamental basics are rigs, having a super sharp hook and an effective rig, bait, having a good quality bait that the fish want to eat, and watercraft. Those, if you take the rest of the elements away from carp fishing and you boiled it down to those 3 things in order of watercraft, bait, rigs, because if you're not on them, you can't catch them. So your watercraft's got to be spot on, and the spot you choose has got to be spot on. Secondly up, you've got to have a good quality bait or something there that they want to eat.
Yeah.
And then once they've eaten it, you've got to have a rig that is effective in hooking them and is super sharp and pricks them. So if you boil down to, if you're having a tough time in carp fish, you think, is it going wrong for me? I always bring it back to the basics. And that's what I tell everybody. If you stick to those 3 fundamental things, you will catch them.
Liquids? Bags?
Yeah.
Always?
Not always. Again, this is something I've found through experiences. I've quite often put hemp oil.
Yeah.
I mean, hemp oil's great all through the winter. So I quite often use hemp oil, certainly in the summer, but there's been occasions where I have injected oils in and not got bites, and then I've recast a bag without the oil and had bites. So again, that blew my mind for a long, long time, because I was like, compact as much goodness into this bag as you can, make it as attractive as you can, nothing to be able to swim over it and ignore it. And that's how I thought about it for a long time. But there were occasions, certainly on these day ticket lakes, where it was evident that I was putting liquid into my bags and weren't getting bites. And the minute I took the liquids out, like the best liquid I found, and this isn't a plug, like this is me being genuine, is the pineapple, the yellow smart liquid.
Keep the sponsors happy. Classic section.
I'm not the others. I mean, the smart liquid is smart liquid. It's the colour that I'm making a point about. That yellow colour.
Do you think that's what it is? It gives it that focal point.
The glow. The glow. It's on the bottom. It's working for you for a lot longer period of time. It's working the upper layers, and by adding that, because that's sort of a fat source, a fat liquid. When you put that in, it's that heavy that it sits on the bottom.
Yeah,
it's not dissipating. It's working for a long period of time, and that yellow glow. I don't know, there's just something about it. And again, I'm not suggesting oils don't catch fish, caught loads on them using them, but over the last few years, I've come away from the oils as much and started adding, if you want to say food-based liquids, so like the smart liquid, it's a fat source, but if you was using, I don't know, there's loads of companies do dedicated food liquids out there, by adding something different in that's going to sit there for longer rather than just drift away.
Do you think generally with what you see in terms of day tickets, that the trend of sort of making things ridiculously attractive, whether that be hook baits, whether that be bag mixes, do you think that trend and the fact that everybody has been publicised and everybody seems to go down that route, do you think that almost when you haven't put anything in and you've gone in just as it is, that is almost more effective because it sort of stands out more, is treated with less trepidation? Do you think that's
Definitely. I mean, I say that, and then the 2 hook baits which I've done. I mean, I went through phases when I was younger. White hook baits were the killer. Then it went to baby washed out pink. Couldn't catch anything but on a baby washed out pink. Now, yellow. I won't cast out unless it's yellow. Like whether that's
every day of
not every most days. Most days. It's only recently I've gone for the 12mm salty squid wafters again, which seem to be catching. But what swims that just either hasn't eaten yellow, knows yellow, they eat. Like I just think yellow it's that one colour in your bag that you never leave home without. You might have 2 or 3 other colours that you are using at that time, but you never leave home without that yellow. And I've noticed since I've gone back to them, like, I'm not saying pink and white colours catch fish, let's be honest, but the yellow, don't know, the last couple of years I haven't cast anything out inside solid bags apart from a yellow hook bait and a 12mm salted squid wafter.
Interesting, the world of bags, mate. We took a segue from targeting fish to day tickets, solid bags. I love that. I'm going to take you to I think this is probably a type of angling, a fish, a venue that I wouldn't, if I looked at your persona, maybe, wouldn't associate with you. I'm going to take you to St Ives and a special fish that you actively went and targeted. This was one, if you like, that was, I want that fish. I'm going to go there and catch it, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, this was after Monk's Pit, so obviously that came to a conclusion, and I love that area. There's so much fishing in that area.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that thing that I've already mentioned about lakes that I've wanted to fish. Like St Ives is steeped in history, like absolutely known for the fat lady in the lagoon. Like, but there are some other fish on that complex which deserve the utmost respect that are on par with it, if that makes sense. So you had Colin in the shallow, you got the round brown in the meadow, you had the Ivo Line, which is the one I targeted in the Ivo, and then the lagoon has gone through a new change with stockfish, and those are coming on now. So you still got a few originals like Magnus in the lagoon, but I was at a point where, so I think I was at AD at this time, and I was doing my tuitions, and it goes back to having that time and being able to string those sessions together to make it work. So what happened was I think we did COVID a few years before.
Yeah.
I was at home, and a friend of mine, Dave Little, who you've had on here recently.
Yeah.
I've known Dave for 10 years since a Codex 30 plus days. So Dave put a picture up of this fish. And you know when you sit there and you're like scrolling through and you're like, wow, showstopper. Like this linear was 32, 33 pounds. So I think these days people are so fickle with size of fish. This thing stopped me as a 30 pounder, and I looked at it and thought, relic. Like, it's a linear, like, it is as old as the hills. Like, it is just the most incredible carp that I'd seen for a while. And at that point, it sparked something which I've gone back to, like, and that doesn't normally happen for me. Like, I'm not normally one, because I haven't had that mindset, because everything's not fit into place to do that. And it did. And I messaged Dave and was like, look, Dave, I want to catch it. Like, and I knew that at that moment I was only doing 2 nights a week, but I knew I could string consecutive weeks together, which was the main part for me at this point. So I knew that I joined at the end of June, and I knew that I'd probably get until sort of October, November because of what I was doing, where if I wanted to, I could string. And I'm not saying that was enough time to catch it, because I caught it relatively quick and probably quicker than what I should have done. But I knew that I could commit to a little bit of time, and it was something that I wanted. So I messaged Dave and said, look, can you... So Dave and Gordy, I went down seeing Gordy, bought my ticket, and I walked past the shallow, walked past the lagoon, walked past the meadow, and looked at them and thought, you know, the nice lakes, I don't mind having a go at them at some point, but that linear, I don't know why.
Why is that?
I just think the looks of it, like, it was something that I hadn't had in my album before in terms of the looks of it. Like, I'd had the ones from Bleasby, I'd had Old Fish, I'd had the ones that are steep, like, but this thing looked different. Like, you could tell, like, it was just on another level. And when I got down there and I looked at the Ivo, so the Ivo it was known as like a Bremen tench pit. So quite often you'd see the lads down there because it was stacked with them, like honestly top to bottom. So that was one problem. The good thing is because you're targeting one specific fish in a lake full of bream and tench and a low stock, at that time there was nobody targeting it. So the lads from St Ives, there's no other carp anglers. So I got down there, and this lake must be, I don't know how big it is. I wouldn't like to say 4, 5, 6 acres, something like that. Full of bream and tench, full of this like stringy weed. There's just another problem. Lily pads, snags, and I think they'd stocked it. I'm sure Gordy, like, this is information I've been told, I don't know. They'd stocked it a few years prior. But St Ives floods. So again, a lot have moved on, and stock, I wouldn't like to say the stock. All I can tell you is it's very low. And when I've spoke to other people, Dave and other people, like, from what I've seen, what they've seen, what they know, 15 to 20 carp is what I saw. I didn't see that many, but it would make sense based on what people catch. So I knew that I'd got something to myself so long as I was the only one that was going to blow this, basically. So this was where mentality started to change. Like, if you meet me on a day ticket lake or message me on social media, I'll tell you everything. Like, I will help people out to what I can do, no problem. But when you target one specific fish, I'm not talking about being rude or arrogant or anything like that, but you don't give all your secrets, edges, and sometimes you have to keep things quiet. And this was one of those occasions where I was prepared to do whatever it took to catch this fish. So the first trip I went down, got my ticket, nobody on. I'd done a bit of digging like you do online. Yeah. Where can I find stuff about this fish? And David obviously told me about his capture, caught it on a white pop-up from this swim. So I got a picture of where like cell boil is. Brilliant, no problem. Found a YouTube video of some young kid miraculously, like, just on there fishing. I don't even think it was for carp. Catch it, but the most significant thing was it had a white upbait in its mouth. So all of a sudden, I've gone from a lake I don't know anything about to knowing that it's been caught twice on a white pop-up. And I met another lovely guy down there who did the photos for me in the end, Sam. He told me a story, he caught on a white pop-up. So all of a sudden,
you're fishing white pop-ups.
I've got something. So, and in the end, I've pieced the capture together so I could find the swim that the guy caught it on YouTube. I knew the one Dave caught it. I knew the one, and they were the only 3 captures I knew of it, all from one particular area of the lake. But this didn't materialise on the first trip. So the first trip I went down, did the night in the swim that Dave caught it from. I didn't see anything. Like, genuinely, the whole time I was there, I saw 4 shows in 4 trips. That's it. Nothing. So I had nothing to go off. So I set up in the swim that Dave had caught it from based on a whim. White pop-ups, caught 1 bream. Did the night, moved back round to a car park. There was this little bay. And June time, there was 3 fish swim past who, they weren't spawning, but they looked...
They're grouping up.
They were grouping up.
Yeah.
And it was just 3 fish. And I looked, there are 2 commons and a mirror. Not big, because like I said, there was nothing else really. That was the one in there. The rest of them were... So I've seen these fish, moving to this corner, thought, not really for me. So I've left them, gone up the other end. Gone up the other end again, not seen anything. Thought, I've got one more night. At least it's my first trip, got it out of the way. I can learn from it. Caught a £10 common that night. Right, rotate a rig, sell match to hatch pop up over a few boilies. Thought, I took a picture of it. Like, I kept it quiet, and I'm like, not even putting it on social media. Like, it's a £10 common.
Yeah.
Like,
but
you slip it back, like in there, I'm like, this is significant. Like, it's part of it. So that was the first trip. Second trip I went down, I've decided to go the opposite sort of way. So I've filled it in with 5 kilo of cell, thinking this thing's the biggest thing in there. Italy, there's nobody else on it.
You're using big baits.
They're going to be 15 millers at this point, because the bream, I've only had 1 bream first trip. So in my head, I'm like, they're not that much of a problem till this trip. So I've put 5 kilo in, and this is where, again, I've learned, because now, if you're fishing a lake that's full of bream and tench, regardless of what you put in, the more bait you put in, the more likely you are to have them in your area.
Yeah.
Like, and I quickly found out, having caught 5 bream within the space of 2 hours on that trip,
horrible, that
I got it wrong. So that was that trip, and I was driving home that trip, like, kicking myself, thinking, why on earth, you silly twat, did you do that? Like, why didn't you just do what caught you the fish in the first time? Like, it's basics. So I'm driving home thinking, I've got to come back. Bearing in mind, St Ives is 2.5 hours from me, 45 minutes. I'm driving home, and I'm on the way to the missus. I'm like, I've only done 1 night. I've messed up. I'm coming back in 2 days just for a night. And she's like, you're crazy, but you do what you need to do. So, went down there for 1 night. By this point, I know where the switch swims this fish has come from.
Right.
So straight away, I'm like, little bait, little bit of bait. White up baits, caught on match hatch, so white and match hatch up baits. It likes cell, and it likes this area. So again, now we're building the pieces.
Yeah.
And on this trip, I've gone in there was a massive tree gone in the water, like snagged for 15 yards. And this particular swim was one that Sam had caught it from. And it was halfway between the areas where I knew this fish had been caught. So I was like, right, this is where I'm going to, like, I've not seen anything again. Like, I've seen 4 fish. And they were on the mornings, and there were scatty fish, like, nothing to go off. Yeah. So I've set up for that trip. And I remember I've put 2 out on rotators, pop-ups, 5-10 cell boilers around, because at this point I've learned from my mistakes that less is more.
Yep.
Down this right hand margin, it's deep. There's like this. It's like a tunnel with like little just water coming in, drip feeding into it. And I'm like, that looks nice. And I've flicked down it with a lead, gone down 5 foot of water, clean. I'm like, that's nice. That's nice. Bit of cover this time of the year. And I've put a rod down there on a D-rig. So I think but what I've done is I've chopped half a Binoffee 15mm wafter in half and put the half bait on the D-rig, and then put a stringer of 2 full boilers but in half. So I've got 4 half sections with a half hook bait. Just trying to be different, match the hatch, trying to nick a bite, stay away from the tension as much as possible. Because I'm thinking if I put 18mm baits out there, there's that many in here, I'm going to catch them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's 18mm baits or not. Tigers, I still think they'd have nailed them. There was that many tension breaming, it was a joke. So I flicked it down there, no problem. 2 hours later, this right hand rod has gone. Like, I'm talking round, no false bleeps, right? And this bank was like, my bivvy was here and there was a step down to it. Mate, I've gone flat on my arse. I'm down. Yeah. I'm at the side of my rod and this thing's hooped round, nearly coming out the backrest. Hooked into it and I'm thinking, I don't know if there's like, I've looked under there. It didn't look snaggy, but you don't know 100%. No. So I've given it some tether. It's come out and I'm thinking, it's a carp. It, by my reckoning, from what I've spoke to people, it's low stock. This could be it already for a trip. It wasn't. It was a 23, 24 pound common.
It wasn't the one.
Mega, like bearing in mind, like unbelievable fish, not a hook holding its mouth. I was that petrified of people seeing me. Like I'd set my mobile phone up on my chair behind the back of these trees. Quick, I mean, mate, it's the worst photo I've ever done. Like the common in focus. I've literally just put it back like it never happened, because I'm thinking if somebody's driving down that road, the eyebrow backs onto the lagoon. If somebody's going on the lagoon and sees me hoisting a carp out, it's eyes I don't need. That night I've done 10 in the morning.
Yeah.
Woke up, thought, I caught it again. A couple walked by me. Like, and I'm doing the night under the stars here. Like, I'm took minimum gear, and I'm laid there just with my eyes poking out. And he's like, he walks past. I went morning, and he turned back around and went, "Hey, Loz, you all right?" I'm like, "Oh no." I'm like, "Mate, you're all right. Can they do me a massive favour and just not mention me? And not because I'm here, because I don't want people to, clearly if I'm fishing on here, because them lakes flood. Like, that Lynn's never moved lakes from my understanding. Right. But it would be quite easy for them to flood into the lagoon, into that. So there's always that element of mystery whether it's even in there. And at this point, I've not even seen it. I'm fishing there on a whim that it's still there. So he's gone there, no problem. Not heard anything else of that. 4th trip's come, and I thought, right, I've got that swim. I know what I'm going to do. So I've put a white and a match the hatch pop up on this silty spot. Out. In between these swims where it's been caught. 10 cell boilers around it, and I've put 1 down the side. So I'm set now. So I've got 2 carp in 3 trips.
Yeah, it's good going.
I'm happy. At some point this is going to give. Anyways, done the night. Oh no, I had a tench, in the right hand rod. So at some point it's right round again. I'm thinking, yes, get in there. This is it now. I mean, tinker, right? Bearing in mind I've got this tree to my left that's in the water, snags down to my right potentially, and there's pads dotted about everywhere. So what I also worked out at this point was, Dave, what time did you call the Ivo? Oh, I caught it at 5 o'clock in the morning. Sam, what time did you? Oh yeah, about 5:30 in the morning. And I'm thinking, okay, so the time I'm going to get this fish, if I'm going to get this fish, there's a very good chance that if I get a bite in the morning from a carp, I'd be quite confident in saying that it's probably going to be that one. So the following morning I've woke up, as you do, put the kettle on and whatnot. Standard story. Laid in bed. I'm on my phone, to be honest. Like I said, I didn't see anything show hardly. Like, there's nothing
on the ground.
Honestly, there's nothing. There was nothing. There was no fish showing. Yeah. There was no fizzing. Like, it was the most
dead.
He was just dead, and I couldn't believe it. Like, because obviously David said like he's seen fish show, and there was nothing in 4 trips. Like, I've been up already. I'm not seeing anything, so I've got back in bed. Not deflated, but like thinking to myself, I've given myself till November. It's now, this was into July now.
But you're only 4 sessions in.
I know, but in my head, I'm like, because of the time limit and the constrictions I've got, bearing in mind this fish has took a long time for certain people to catch, I'm thinking maybe I've been a bit too overconfident and I've not given it the respect it deserves for the length of time I need to catch this. So all of a sudden, the middle of the rod, the bobbin was on the floor. It's gone to top, and I've got my shot fucking crocs on. I'm stamping down the bank, fucking tench. Before I've gone to pick the rod up, it's going out a few little tugs and like a little bit of lines come off the reel. So I've picked the rod up and it's weeding me up, and I'm thinking, oh, it's tench.
Tench, yeah.
Tench. Started to wind anyway. It's come free on the surface. Is massive eruption. So I'm like, right, that's not a tension. That's a carp. Took a little bit of line, and at this point now, this swim's only tight, and I've got 3 rods in this swim. I've got this big tree down to my left. The visibility in the Ivo was to 3 foot, something like that, 4 foot. Got to remember this tension beam in it. Anyways, so I'm playing this carp, took a bit of line, and it's come from it's about 15 yard out, and I could see the line, and it's giving it all that twisting and turning, and at that point you're like, oh shit,
that's horrible.
Like, you need to start knocking, you feel sick, everything goes out the window. Like, you think to yourself, I'm just going to stay calm, it's just a carp, it's going to go in the net. Nah, what a load of no chance. So I've seen it, I can see them match the hatch hook bait hanging out his gob.
Not a white one.
Not a white one, match the hatch. And anyways, he's gone to the snag a couple of times. He's come up to the surface, knocked my other rods out of the way, scooped the net under it, and I've landed it. I've just dropped to my knees, chucked my rod in the bushes, and been like, well, that's it then. Like, I'd gone from thinking I hadn't given it enough respect or enough time to all of a sudden it sat in the bottom of my net.
What's that, 4 sessions?
4 trips, yeah.
That's
incredible. Like, nobody else on the lake, nobody else around. So I've put a message on my Facebook just saying, is anyone in the St Ives area? Because you're not doing self-takes of that, I'm sorry. No. Not unless you have to. And then Sam, the lad who caught you, I've got to know a little bit. He come round for the lagoon. Yeah, Loz, can't believe you've caught it. I thought you were a day ticket angler.
Well, true though, isn't it?
It's true, yeah. So I'm like, well, it is what it is. And yeah, caught that, mate. And that was the end to a very productive little campaign that I didn't expect to go that way. And after that capture, I had every intention of going on the Meta for the Brown. I'd still got a few months left. Like, I'm out of my mind to think that a few months, but I had a few months, not spare, but I wanted to go on there and do that. So the Meta was the complete opposite, 110 acres or whatever it is. But I'd gone down for 2 weeks, twice a week, not fished it. So I'd done 10 hours each week, so 20 hours of driving just to bait up. And I was going in, like, anyone who's been around the Meadow, you're going over little planks, like, it's through trees. There's nobody round unless there's anglers for ages. And so I've gone down like midnight and I'm baiting up like kilos and kilos and kilos. And within that period, just as I'm about to fish it, the brown got caught. And I thought, oh no. So I left it a week. And when I got caught again. So it's been caught twice now. And now we're into September.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, it's only got probably 1 capture left. So I went down for a session, didn't see anything, didn't catch anything. That pre-baiting's gone because I've left it. So I've gone in the swim, but I fished the spot.
Did it come from that swim?
No, it didn't come from that swim. Not as far as I'm aware. It come from the opposite end of the lake.
Came right over your bait.
Yeah. And it got to the point where I'd done the session in September and I just thought to myself, do you know what? I found out my missus was pregnant.
Yeah.
So I was like, we're coming into winter. I've got 9 months before this baby's due. Like, I've got a little bit of a spring campaign. This isn't the best time of the year to be starting a new campaign coming into the autumn. It's the wrong time to do this. You're going to kill yourself for no reason. Yes, I might have caught a couple, but you're not going to get what you want out of this at the wrong time of year. So I pulled off, and that was that.
You did have a winter campaign though, didn't you? You had a result in the winter where you went and targeted one fish as well.
There was, again, I won't say 2 sessions. I wouldn't say it went. It was a campaign.
Was it for a fish?
It was for, so again, another fish that probably I didn't even know about till I went for it. I'll be honest with you. Again, what happened was obviously I've been to Old Mill Lakes quite a bit.
Yeah.
So Chris Marler, the owner, rang me out of the blue and said, look, I've got this lad in Wakefield who's got a set of lakes, which turned out to be strawberry Newlands. So strawberry's one lake, Newlands is another. He wants to do a bit of promotion in it. They're not 40-pounders or massive, but it's got a nice little cabin on it with a log burner. It's got a few nice fish to go at. It's only January. Do you want to have a go and do a bit of promotion? So I was like, yeah, no problem, mate. I'll go up for a session.
Cabin?
No
fire?
Mate,
January?
Mate, yeah, yes,
Wallop.
please. In there, feet up.
Right.
Yes,
that's carp fishing place.
Yeah. So I thought, I'll have a bit of that. It's freezing, no problem. So I've gone down there anyway. I'm like, mate, I've been told there's no monsters in here, but what actually is in here? Have I got anything to... Do you know what I mean? Like, it's got to be something, because otherwise, why come and ask me? It can't just be... And he showed me this picture of this mirror, and I looked at him and went, oh, shit. Like, all of a sudden, it turned out to be this ridiculous... And again, something I hadn't got in my album, like a zip linear, but with starburst, like, scales all along its belly. completely different to anything that I'd ever seen before. I was like, oh my God. Like, all of a sudden, the old spheres started tingling, you know what I mean? You're like, oh, this is the old spheres. And you're like, okay, this has got a bit more depth to it. So I was like, I know I've come for one session. You just do a little bit of a winter thing, obviously, till spring, March. If you string a few sessions together. And he's like, yeah, no problem, mate. So I'm like, all right then. So first session, obviously I don't know anything about it. This place is really shallow, silty as hell.
Was it small?
Small, really small.
What, how small?
2 acres, maybe. Yeah. But snags, like, this islands of reeds in it. It's no deeper than 4 or 5 foot at best and 2 foot of that silt. So he showed me a few little areas and whatnot, and I fished, and he showed me this bush, and I've walked around and seen this bush thinking, far side, no swims, bush overhanging, took a marker rod, depth there, clean. No, this is it. So
classic Loz.
Yeah,
it's all about the bush.
So I've gone over. So I've started baiting that particular spot. Got my rigs over there, out over there. One rig somewhere else. Cut long story short, that first trip I had 5 fish off the bush.
Jeez. Nothing
massive, 20 pounders and whatnot. But the bush rod did it. Yeah. No other rod. I've tried all sorts out everywhere else. Bearing in mind at this point, nobody's on. Nobody's fishing it. So I'm the only person there. That's why I want somebody there to fish it. Can't get about on any other rod. So I'm like, oh, God, that it's one rod job. So I took everything out, fishing with one rod, and up against that bush, I didn't know what was there. So I was fishing locked up, bobbing to top, did it, pulling it away, and then you're away and you're safe again. Second trip's come. I'm like, I've got James, a friend with me then, and he's doing a bit of a YouTube blog. So this video is on YouTube, of this fish. So I didn't know I was going to catch it, by the way. I just took him there to make a bit of a film for him. And so I've put that one rod out, sat back in the cabin, lovely. I've caught a couple of fish. Weather's dropped a bit at this point. We're getting -1 at night. It hasn't froze. Log burners on, living the life. Yes, please. Proper. So I've had a couple of fish, and I've had a fish that morning, mega fish, row scales, big plated, jet black, full winter colours, unbelievable carp, proper carp. And I'm like, that's the one that's made it. There's your shoot, mate, no problem. I've had this funny take, I've pulled the rod back out, I've had this funny take an hour later, and I'm like, I can't risk this because it's near that bush. I don't know what's going off. I've got to hit it. Hit it, leant into it. After biting on the camera, I actually say, as it's moving about in the margin, I'm like, this would be funny, wouldn't it, if that then, yeah? Just finish on that for your thing. Next minute, pops up. All of a sudden, I've got it on, right? So, playing this fish, anyway, I've netted this fish, and it was all of what I thought it was going to be. Again, slate grey, zip linear, starburst scales across its belly. Again, I'm not saying that if I hadn't caught it within that period until we get to the spring that I would have gone back for it, but I'm saying at that moment in time, for those few months, that got me enough to make me want to keep going there and just having a go for it.
It's a crazy
Do you know what
fish,
I mean?
Isn't it?
It's incredible.
Shape of it as
yeah,
well.
Just there's other fish around the country like that, but it's very unique in what it is, and unfortunately, that's no longer there now.
Is it gone?
Yeah, it's gone this year. So again, as fate had it, and as things fall into place, I'll be honest with you, it was about £28, I think, something like that. Yeah, but again, not taking into context that everything's got to be massive. It's all relevant of what it means to that person, And for me,
it's a mega one, isn't
the looks of it, there was nothing else around our area or what I've seen that come anywhere close to that of being that level of uniqueness. So, that's what made me go and get. And again, call it luck, because it probably was. I don't think it was luck getting the bite, because you have to fish to get the bites, but it was certainly luck that picked my hook bait up.
Take the luck, mate.
So, 2 sessions, unfortunately enough to catch it.
Anything about now that you'd want to, I don't know, sort of change to your style of fishing to go and target something?
Yeah, I get that little urge every now and again, because obviously tactics, which I'm sure we'll come on to, with RidgeMonkey, that's been my bread and butter for a couple of years. So that's revolved around day ticket lakes. And as good as that has been, it has put a toll on me in a certain aspect that is very demanding. It's not a normal fishing situation. I was doing it for a job to produce content, to try and help people and to educate. It's not a normal situation that anybody has to go through. anybody's done in the industry before, and it hasn't been done before in the industry. It probably won't be done again. Like fishing live on camera.
It's mad.
For social media.
And what did you do? How many venues?
I did 46 tactics sessions in 58 weeks. So in a year, in 12 or 13 and 14 months fishing, I fished 46 venues, did 46 live sessions on day ticket venues all around the country. Venues I'd been to before, venues I hadn't been to before, like a real mixed bag. And I'm not just talking like, you text me, obviously we both went to Orchid last winter.
Yeah.
I'd just come back from Orchid. It was -5 like for 2 of the nights that I was there. Like, I'm not just talking it was done in the glory time of the year.
No, God, no.
Like this was there was points in this, I'm not gonna lie, and I'll hold my hand up and say, this nearly broke me.
Yeah.
Like, because it wasn't normal, and this took the cartwheel stuff that I've done day ticket wise before to a whole new level. Because when you've got eyes on you live, it's different to doing a normal film shoot. You've got pressure. We've all got pressure when we go on shoots.
Yeah.
By the by. But if it doesn't work out, you either scrap that shoot or you decide to redo it later on down the line, or it's good enough to trickle out as a film. That's what usually happens. So there is an element of pressure there, but it's a different kind of pressure. This was that taken up another level because people knew where you were. People were watching you fish. People around the lake knew that you were there.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you've got eyes on you at all times for that 48 hours while I was at that venue. And it built another bit of pressure that I'd never felt before, because all of a sudden I'm thinking in the back of my mind, like, although I'm educating people, it's great. I think it's a brilliant series, as hard as it is. I'm thinking people are waiting for me to fail here.
That's exactly it, though, isn't it? You built yourself, when you put yourself, because fishing's fishing, everyone blanks. You can't avoid it. But when you've put yourself as, I'm giving you information on this venue, on this tactic, and then nothing happens, then you know the weight of that expectation is that, well, he knows what he's doing. He knows exactly what this tactic's all about, and he's going to smash them up, and he's caught nothing. So it's absolute rubbish. And I completely get that. But to do that live, and I remember it being on every single week, and those two things, being able to produce every single week over the course of whatever weather conditions, air pressure, whatever else is going on, new venues, to then have all that pressure on you, and then to do it live every week, mate, that's a lot in one cocktail of madness, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. Again, what people probably won't see with that is, and we've touched on it slightly, is when you're campaign fishing and you come back, you're ready to go for your next week. So you know the rigs, you know what you're going to do. 9 times out of 10, apart from filling your water bottle up and getting your food ready, everything's ready to go. With that, it was a completely different thing, because one day I'd be up in Lincolnshire, like fishing with solid bags, and the next day I'd be down at Linear fishing 120 yard with spinner rigs. Everything had to change. Like, and then venues I didn't know and go to, I had to take the kitchen sink, because I didn't know what, apart from the little bit of research I did on social media, on the internet, talking to a few people, that's as far as it went. So I was forever, like, the amount of hours that I spent researching, changing things, getting things ready. Like, bait always changed, because some lakes I had to fish whole boilers, some lakes I'd be fishing crumb, some lakes through the winter I'd take naturals. So what happened behind the scenes was hard, and it's not normal. Like, I'll remember, that isn't normal fishing. It was there for a purpose, to try and educate and help people. Because if I went to that venue, say for example a little venue that somebody fished up north that no one's heard of, there are people that fish that lake. So people tuning into there would have seen how I went about it, had the opportunity to ask me questions on social media that might help them during their session. So although some of the lakes probably weren't as well known, like, there was a lot of the big boys in there, but there was a lot of lakes here, there and everywhere that probably weren't under the radar, that just don't get fished that much. Because day ticket angling, there's a lot of day tickets out there. Yeah. A lot of day tickets, and you can't physically cover, like, between the discovering day tickets and tactics, I've bar a few that you probably haven't heard of or dotted here, there and everywhere. I've not all of them, but there's a lot of the big boys I've covered within those sessions. And they're not sessions where you continually go into the same day ticket lake. You're chopping and 1 week I'm here, got to catch, produce a session, then I'm there.
Did you just do it it's not planned for the whole year, you just literally planned it on a week whim?
Pretty much every single week, bar me having annual leave, or having to go to a show or whatever.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, 46 out of 58, so there was 12 weeks out of 12, 14 months nearly.
That's pretty relentless, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, it took a toll on me. I'm not going to lie. But out of 46 sessions, I blanked 3 times, which in the grand scheme of it is something that I'm proud of, because that was a lot of, it wasn't so much that of the tally, it was the hard work that went into it, you know, and I was happy with that, if that makes sense. Like, I sit there now, I sit back and think, how do you even do it? I mean, like, Levy and people that, like, who I spoke to, who saw and watched me go through it, like, have openly said to me, like, we couldn't have done it. No way. Like, mentally, physically, like, we could not have done it. And looking back and sitting there and thinking, how on earth did I do it? Like, the strain on you to do
intense,
that.
Isn't it?
Because, like I said, it's up and down the country as well. I was 4 hours up north, 4 hours down south, like, venues I didn't know. So I'm turning up trying to promote a lake for somebody and to give educational advice to people on a lake that I've never been to. And that's where, again, the solid bag comes into it. Again, to do that style of angling, number one, you've got to have your mindset right that this isn't normal. You're doing it for a job and you're doing it for a reason. So when you go, whatever happens, happens. Do your best. Enjoy it for what it is, and only use things that you are confident in. So during the live sessions, a lot of the time, I did stick to the same 3 or 4 rigs at each venue, because I can't turn up and do something to teach people during the session that was completely alien to what I do, just because it was that venue. I had to do what I was confident in, but then the questions and throughout the stories, there was a lot more broad on teaching people, showing people how to tie rigs.
There's all sorts of questions.
There was all sorts. So that's where the whole session, the actual in-session piece, was more about me just trying to catch a fish to hold for the camera as substance for the series.
That was the main thread, wasn't it?
Yeah, and fortunately now that has come to an end. And I loved it, but I hated it.
You didn't love it, mate.
I did. It gave me another level of confidence, and in what I was doing was right, and it almost gave me another level of mindset that I know full well not a lot of people have. Like, that mindset there, if I had to do that again now, I can draw on that experience and go and do it. If I've got to go somewhere new now, I've got a lot of confidence that I'll go and do it.
I think that there's no substitute for experience. To have done that for 48, however many weeks it was, that experience would take, let's say, an ordinary angler. Ordinary is such a random term, you know what I'm saying? An average angler to fish that many different venues and to go there and try and produce a result might take 10 years, might take more. I don't know.
Yeah.
But to do that in a concentrated period of time, you're definitely harnessing an awful lot of information. And as you said, it gives you confidence so you can go to those new places. Generally, that concept, you talk there about having what you're confident in, your 3 or 4 rigs as your starting point. For you, apart from that little bit of research that you've done on the venue, which might give you a bit of a key as to nuisance fish, types of bait you might need to take, obviously rules and restrictions. For anybody out there who is not got a syndicate ticket, might go through the course of a season and want to fish different day ticket venues, your advice from that experience that you've had going to different places, what would that be? What would be the main things to consider? Because especially nowadays, there's so many mega day ticket complexes, but they can be tricky, mate. They're busy. There's a lot of sort of competitiveness in terms of the angling on there, and any edge you can get or any tips you can get or any way you can glean extra bits can often be the difference between you getting a bite and not getting a bite.
I think nobody's going to fish that many venues, so if you was going to do it and have the year on it, I would probably say choose 3 venues. So I'd narrow it down to 3 of the ones that light your fire, so to speak, that you really want to go for, whether that's because they are the biggest reputational wise, like your Linears, your Bluebells, Sandhurst, Burners, that sort of thing, or whether it's somewhere that's local to you that is under the radar and there's some nice fish in there you want to catch. But if you do it, choose 2 or 3, pick a plan of when you're going to target those, so don't flip between them. If you're going to do it, string them together. So pick one for the spring, one for the summer, one for the autumn, and whatever happens at that point, cut off, because the minute you start flitting between them, you lose touch very quickly and you can't build that picture and you can't build that confidence up. So if you're going to choose, say, Sandhurst, pick which time, go through the catch records on the website, see when it does the most bites, because quite often you can check from social media, right, clearly the autumn time it's fished its nuts off, so I'm going to go back next autumn, Sandhurst. Burners fishes really well in the spring. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go to Linear to fish 3 on a spot and learn my trade that way at this time of the year, and do it that way. Because if you can string 2 months of each together, like fishing those lakes, because not all them sessions, and what I'm saying is if you go to Linear 1 week, there's no guarantee that you're even going to get on fish on any of those lakes that particular week. You've not learned anything. So if you then go to Sandhurst the following week and you can't get a decent swim, all of a sudden you've wasted 2 of your sessions not even being able to put anything into practice. Whereas if you go back to Linear the following week, the chances are you might get on fish or somewhere close to fish. So choose 3 venues of fish that light your fire, that you want to catch, that tick the boxes for you, and venues that you want to go to. Stick to those 3. Do as much research as possible before you go, and build the rest of the picture up yourself, either from friends or people you know, or as your sessions go. And I promise you that by the end of it, not only will you come out a better angler, because all three, say, I'm choosing those at random, but those 3 lakes all present different problems. Like Sandhurst is weedy, spot fishing gets really weedy in the summer. Linear's long range fishing, 3 accurately tight on a spot, like Brasenose 1, Brasenose 2 for sure. Bit of zig fishing in there, maybe St John's. And Burners the same, weedy, very long range fishing, and all 3 present different problems, like Barbler sucks on there. So by the end of it, I guarantee you become out a better angler, because you've put yourself in a situation that you're probably not comfortable in, that you've probably learnt things from, and you can take that forward with you, onto your syndicates. Because all of a sudden, if your syndicate's weedy, long range fishing with Barbler sucks, you're like, did a bit of that last year. I know for a fact now that you don't lose like as many fish on Barbler sucks as though people reckon you do. Do you know what I mean? So you can take that with you. So that would be my main advice if somebody was going to do that, for sure.
Yourself, what are your, I'm not going to say attributes, but I'm going to say your things that are key when you're doing what you've done, moving across different venues. What have been the sort of game changers, is cliche, but the things that have stood out to you that have really been sort of points that you now take forward into if you drop onto a new venue?
Stick to what you know, for starters, which is what we've covered a little bit with rigs. I'm very much a creature of habit, always have been. So like the multi-rig still plays a big part in my angling, which I've fished on 10, 12 years ago now. Don't use it as much, but it's there. Zigs play a huge part. And if you're going to fish day ticket venues, like moving forward, it gives you that broad horizon that you've fished them before. Like take the confidence from the rigs, your bait. Your watercraft comes with experience, but there is things you can do that people can tell you to try it, like with wind direction and pressure, looking at the weather. The weather plays a massive, but like people don't understand how much, like for these trips I was looking, I'm normal fishing it a week or 2 in advance and watching it leading up, because the amount of difference, like a little tiny bit of air pressure change, or whether we've got a different wind coming in or what wind it is. And ordinarily, a lot of the time when you go to a lot of these lakes, you can probably say to me, right, I know where the fish are going to be based on that weather conditions. But when you're turning up somewhere new, it's pretty much impossible to do that. So stick and do the basics right, and then add in your experience of what you're learning along the way. So as long as you go back to it, as long as you get your watercraft right, as long as you get your swim choice right, you found them, your experience of fishing on the right spots, you're putting it where you see the fish, you put bait out there they want to eat with good, effective rigs with a sharp hook, you will catch carp.
For me, you've got multi-rig, you've got your solid bag. What's the other?
Rotator. So I've got a couple of pop-up rigs, and after that I fish a slip D, just a normal braided rig, and sometimes a D rig, depending on, like, if there's loads of bream and tench. I haven't got this massive vocabulary, if you like, of rigs that, you watch YouTube and there's every rig under the sun, which is brilliant, because some rigs will suit some people. But for me, if I can nail it down to a handful that I've got past experience with, no won't let me down, they don't tangle, because not one rig will suit every single situation, like we've already mentioned with the bags, like with the tench, the long range fishing. Yeah, they present problems. D rigs are brilliant if you're fishing on lakes with loads of nuisance fish, high stock of carp. You want a rig that's not going to tangle on the cast, reset every single time, which is massively important. So long as you stick to the principles and don't sway and think, oh, what's he using? So he's caught fish and he's using such and such. I better use such and such, because I guarantee you won't have the same, unless you're very lucky. 9 times out of 10, when you start trying to use things that you don't use, your head goes, your confidence goes. So that's what I try and tell people on my tutorials, is keep it simple.
You said something pretty, I think pretty wise. I don't know, your experience of it anyway. The baiting situation, like we talk and we look at sort of big complexes. I've been to a fair few this year, and it does seem like the application of bait, there seems to be more people putting more and more bait out. You talked to me about, for you sort of gone against that in terms of putting small amounts of bait out. And for you, when it comes to bait, I think naturals, because I've seen you do a load with them.
Yep.
But also, regardless, and you said it a little bit when you talked about bags, is freshness. Mm-hmm. Now, the concept of using a small amount of bait, did that come from the fact that you'd seen sheer loads of bait going in over various complexes and venues that you'd fished?
So a few years ago,
filling
it in, fishing over a load of bait seemed to work really well wherever you went. After COVID, things have, and I don't know whether that's because there's more angling pressure on the bank, more bait going in, and certainly these day ticket venues, what you've got to take into consideration is you never know how much bait the angler before you has put in as well. And that always has to play a factor, because if you go in there with 2 buckets of bait, there's nothing to say that he's put 2 buckets of bait in and the fish ain't cleared it. So all of a sudden you're fishing over 4 buckets of bait, which isn't ideal.
No.
So it's all based around experience, knowledge of the lake. And I have certainly found over the last couple of years, I'm not saying no bait, but certainly starting off lighter than what I did and fishing for a bite at a time as opposed to fishing for multiple hits, especially in the work that I've had to do, going to lakes that I don't necessarily know or been to. That plays a factor. But if you're going to a normal dating lake, say you go into Linney, for example, I'd probably start with, during the warm months, 12 spoms, winter probably 6 or 8 spoms, and then build it as I go along. So if I think I should have had a bite or nothing's happened, there's nothing wrong with putting another spom or 2 in. But don't put too much in, because otherwise them fish have got to clear more up before they get to your hook bait. I know they might pick it up first, but that might be what happens. And they've only got to get through more bait before they pick yours up. And I'm not sure, over the last couple of years that I've found, certainly with these day ticket lakes, don't get me wrong, there's certain times of the year in the spring when they're having it, and it clicks and you need the bait. But certainly going through the year that I found, the fishing for a bite, even if it's a day ticket lake, which is synonymous with big hits, big bait, has got me more bites with the bags, like linear in May, like I've already mentioned, like B2. Like, I fished on the side point, like the wind was hacking in there was a big weed bed in front of me, the fish were there, I fished with single bags with two or three spoms of bait over each bag. Like, that's not known for linear, and still caught 36 fish, so it just goes to prove you don't need to put 2 or 3 buckets of bait in to catch a big hit of fish. You know, you've got to have the right bait in the right place. And going back to the freshness of it, like we've already spoke off camera about naturals. Like, it's okay watching these videos and thinking naturals is the answer. It's not necessarily the answer. It's an edge to a certain extent. It does give you another level of sort of being it like to your mix, but you've got a duty to look after that bait. Like, it's not just a tin of corn that you keep in a tin in the back of your van. Yeah. Like, I've seen it before where people put, casters, sweet corn, straight into a big bucket of boilie crumb, and they've taken 1 bucket fishing and they've got it out, and that's what they're going hell for leather, and then the seagulls are eating all the bits off the surface, and for a fact those casters in that corn have dried out and are floating. Like, for me, when I go, it's a bit of a pain in the arse, but I take more buckets than what I need. So if I've taken dead reds and caster, I'll always look after them properly at home, get to the lake, fill a bucket with lake water, pour them in, take any floaters off, pour the water off again, and pour water back on again. So by the end of it, everything's sunk, there's no floaters, and it's crystal clear where you can see your bait, and it's as fresh as possibly be. And then the next morning, I'll take that off again, and I'll refreshen them up with more water. Same with corn. Like, I won't put corn into a mix and just leave it. Like, I'll put enough corn in that I need to put that amount of bait in that I want to. So I'll keep them in the tins, in the juice, the sweeteners and the sugars and everything that they're in, as opposed to letting them dry out. And it's the same with boilies. Like, the amount of times you see people say freezer baits are hard to deal with. Now, don't get me wrong, freezer baits are a lot hard to keep because you need a freezer to do it. So I understand where shelf life comes into their own. However, freezer baits are a bit of a pain in the arse for some people, because what they do is they take them out of the freezer in the bag, chuck it on the garage floor or in the shed floor or wherever they are, and they leave it. What they don't take into consideration is the ice in the bottom. water is a catalyst for starting the turning process in the bait and for to activate it. That ice turns to water in that bag. So naturally, those baits are going to take that water on. It's going to start activating them. So naturally, they're going to go off quicker. Whereas if you get them out, take them out. I've got a big like industrial cooking tray that I drilled holes in the bottom of. So I put them in an air dry bag, shake all the freezer burn off, all the ice, bang them into that tray, leave them overnight. And what I'll find in the morning is they're all bone dry, and you squeeze them slightly and they break up. So they're not marbles.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's where I start either crumbing it up. But once I've got to the finished article or whether I want whole baits, chopped baits or crumb, then I'll add something like hemp oil or a liquid to it, which will preserve it for as long as I need for that session. So although they're a lot more hassle, it's not as difficult as what you think as long as you've got the tools to do it. It just takes a little bit of time to... But you wouldn't use shelf life then? I'll be honest, I can hand on heart say, I promise you, I've never used a shelf life boiler in my life. Because I'll tell you the main reason is, one, I've never gone abroad for or done long sessions where I felt the need to do that. Two, because I've always used freezer baits from the days of when I went with my dad, like it's all of what I've ever known. And obviously then you talk to people who've been in this industry a long time, you know how fresh the quality ingredients are going to freeze. But it's now, I'm not for 1 second going to say you can't catch it. Shelf life is rapidly catching up with freezer baits. Some would say now that are as good as freezer baits. And that's fine, that's brilliant. But if I had to have a choice, I would, because I've got access to a freezer, and I've caught so many fish for so many years, I don't feel the need to do it. And if I was going for a long trip, I would dry the baits out a little bit longer so all the moisture's gone out inside, and I would have hemp oil and rock salt onto them, which would preserve them for a week's long set, or as long as I wanted anyway. So I have got a couple of bags of shelf life in the garage, but they are as hook baits. So I take them for hook bait reasons, not necessarily to feed. Interesting. It's definitely a theme in your bait in terms of freshness, the due diligence and care within that as well. Obviously, the time that it takes to sort of have everything prepped, separate buckets, keep everything as fresh as possible. We touched on naturals. We talked about casters. We talked about all that. Wormers, definitely. I think I saw you on a thinking tackle using worm at Linear, did I? Yeah. Must have. But I think, obviously, in the last few years, it's become more publicised. There's been a lot more information out there about the use of worm and other naturals and sort of its ability to not get fish to feed, but to create a situation whereby those fish are actively searching out the scent, whatever it is in those amino acids. For you, over the course of that series, have you noticed the use of that more readily on day ticket venues by just every angler, not just a few? Yeah, I mean, to end that note, what you've got to put yourself in a situation of is, if you're on a lake with 46 other people with 2 people next to you, one either side, and your bait is exactly the same or worse off than what they are, why are them fish going to come into your swim and eat your bait and not pick theirs up? Yeah. If yours is as fresh as it can be, I like to think that they'd rather have mine than what they would do theirs, because you never know what people are putting in. So that's the way I think about it. But in terms of the worms have been around a little while now. Yeah. There's no doubting that they turn a good spod mix into a great spod mix at certain times. Yeah. So it started with a lot of worms, which was expensive, like really expensive. They were like 20 quid a kilo at one point. They still are, 23 quid now to most. I need to start breeding worms now. So what I've done now over the last few years is started to use less of them, and I found that they're more effective in less than what they are in larger quantities. Really? So what you're looking for in that worm is the amino acids and what's inside the worm, not necessarily the shell. So by chopping them up and adding them to your spod mix before you start it, that's the most important thing. Do not buy a kilo of worms and spend 23 quid on them to chop them up in a bait bucket and drive 3 hours to your chosen venue, because the minute one dies, they're all knackered. So don't do that. Chop them up as you go along. So I normally take them in the bags, the breathable bags that they come in. Yeah. Take them in the bag, leave them in the soil, everything. Take a riddle with me now. Put what I need in there. Like if I'm knocking up a 10 spod mix, I'll put 2 handfuls of chopped worm in, which in the grand scheme of things, if you just put it in a spod, it'd be 1 spon full of chopped worm, but mixed in that mix, it becomes more smaller pieces, should I say. So I'll riddle off the soil and whatever they're in to just leave me the worms, bang them in the bucket first, chop them up with a pair of worm scissors till they're all blitzed. And I like to leave little tiny chunks. Like I don't want nothing there for the carp to eat, but I don't want
big, long, like whole worms or half worms. So once I've got them in the bucket, then I'll add the rest of my spod mix, and then I'll mix it round, and I'll just give it 20 minutes, half an hour, just to let those amino acids and everything that's in the worms soak into the crumb and whatever else is in that bucket. Then I'll put them out. So they're going out as fresh as can be. I've still got my other worms ready to go when I need them. And I have found, definitely over the last couple of years, that because they've been used so much now, over the course of the last few years, less is more. Less is more for sure.
Oh, it's interesting. Take me back to the series, mate. Tactics. Talk to me about your highs and low points within those venues, mate, because it's an awful lot of fishing on an awful lot of different situations, scenarios, weather conditions and venues.
I guess the winter time was a low point.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of it, because ordinarily winter's hard. You sat out there in minus conditions, freezing your nuts off. I hate mud. I've got massive OCD. It gives me anxiety. I can't do it, honestly.
It gives you anxiety?
Shit up to the eyeballs. No, thank you. Right? Gives me anxiety, right? So during the winter, you've got to have a serious mindset to go through all that winter. And the one thing that's got to drive you is the fish that you're targeting or what you're going for. There's got to be light at the end of the rainbow of a prize that you are aspiring to catch. But when you're doing it, fishing places that ordinarily, not saying that you wouldn't want to be, but you're doing it for a reason.
It's not your choice.
It's not my choice.
Yeah.
It's work, which sounds ungrateful. It's not. It's really not. Like, I wouldn't change my job for anything. But when you're doing it for that element of wanting to catch something to keep you there, to motivate you when it's not going right and it's cold and it's wet and it's miserable, that goes out the window. So as much as the winter was my low points, the high points was the one at Orchid that was -5, where I had 3 fish to over 30 pounds, like half the lake frozen, like massive high point for me because I'd never been to Orchid. It was -5, half the lake was froze, like, and again, I suppose I was slightly motivated with that because I knew what was swimming in there. So it's different again. But some of the venues I've been to haven't got that like prestige and sort of fish that get you up and motivate you, sort of cheer you up. So as much as the winter was my low point, it was my high point as well. And obviously throughout Tactics I've had guests. So like at work, I run our sponsored anglers team. So I was trying to get out with as many of our sponsored anglers, like obviously for PR for them, to build them up. So people, like, they're there for a reason, very good anglers. They could give something to Tactics and maybe that was different to me. So again, for people to learn. So I got out with a fair few of them to showcase their skills and what they can bring to the table. And then I often did Tactics with tuition clients as well. So I almost found that Tactics was better with a client.
Yeah, with something to bounce off.
Somebody to bounce off, somebody to show, for me to show, like imparting something on them implicating it into what they're doing, and then the success at the end of it. So it had a storyline. You know, I couldn't always take a tuition client with me. So for example, for some of the venues, some of them were slightly difficult. Like, and when you have somebody with you, like, you can't fish at 100% because you're always in the back of your mind thinking about your clients. You've got to look at, so the high sitting at the end of it now is 46 sessions, 58 weeks, 3 blanks. The lows was freezing cold winter, having to push through it mentally, and drive through it to get to the warmer months where things improved. But overall, I wouldn't change any of it for anything, especially from the experience and knowledge I've gained from it. Like I said, it's never been done in the industry before. It was an industry first. It might not be done in the industry again, fishing live every single week at different lakes. And it's not a normal situation. So I've been the one person to put myself through that. And I figure that going forward for the next 30, 40 years, hopefully, of my carp fishing like life, that will have a massive impact on me, knowing that I've done that.
Your experiences fishing live, I think that's not a lot of stuff that people have really done. There's obviously your fishing and people talk retrospectively, like we have on this podcast about captures at the end. But while you're going through it, to be live, especially in sort of the modern day climate with people about, what was it like being sort of noticed, known, people seeing you on venues? How was all that whilst you're trying to do a job, get some information across, deal with whatever's in front of you fishing wise, and you've got the element of that as well? Was that all right?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm a people person. Like I will talk to anybody, help anybody, like have a coffee, but like I'm not that type of guy. Do you know what I mean? I'm very welcoming and I like to think people can come to me. It added another element of pressure because once they come to me, I knew that they knew that I was there, if that made sense.
Yeah.
So, and then word gets, you know what it's like, word gets round very quickly, round lakes, especially small lakes and like lakes where everyone knows each other. Oh, such and such is here. It happens. So again, it was just another element of pressure onto the top of what was already a mentally draining thing to do. Again, it goes back to being different. Once we're on them shoots, unless we put something on social media or on our personal profiles, 9 times out of 10 people don't actually know, apart from the owners and maybe some of the members or people there don't actually know where we are doing it, you know. So I absolutely loved it. And like I said, those day ticket lakes are a different type of thing because you can be as open as you want, you know, because I was going somewhere different every week and it wasn't my bread and butter going there every week and it wasn't a particular fish and it wasn't a campaign. You know, day ticket wise, I'm happy to help anybody out at any time, any advice. It does not matter to me.
You did see a bit of the darker side though, didn't you, mate? You told me about a certain incident whereby people obviously clocked on the fact that where you were live, didn't they? And they weren't so friendly, which I know is an exception, but it's still in the mix of doing all that pretty mad. Yeah,
I mean, obviously I won't say the venue or exactly what it was, but something did happen on one of those shoots that emphasised what can happen when you put yourself out there to and showcase where you are. Like, because I'm not so sure what happened was necessarily just carp anglers. It's clearly somebody like carp fishing. There was clearly a lot of alcohol involved and stuff, but you do put yourself in a position where you're vulnerable, especially if you did what I did, where I was travelling alone a lot of the time, places I didn't know where I was. And through the winter, you know what it's like. People go off the bank. You're quite often the only one or the only couple of people there. So you're isolating yourself to situations that necessarily you don't want to be in. You know, and there has been a darker side with that. I mean, look, it's a one-off incident. Like, it's never happened before to me. It probably never happened again, and I don't know anything else like in the industry. But it was a situation that was there because I was live, and you wouldn't get that with a normal camera shoot. So that only came towards the back end of it. Like, it's a freak one-off incident, and a lot of people do live stories and stuff now, and that was just one of those occasions. Unfortunately, that
does make you think, though, doesn't it? Like, you think. We're so lucky because most of the angling community, everybody, mate, their sound, it's brilliant to be in the position we're in, to go out and do that thing, talk to everyone. I love it. Very much the same as you. But then you do sometimes, when you hear something, and other people have expressed similar incidents, you think you are actually sometimes giving your location away live. And if somebody, I don't know, wasn't so nice or didn't, it does open you up, doesn't it? You do have that element in there, which is very modern in terms of a whole set of circumstances, but it is something that you do have to consider, don't you? Especially when you're talking sponsored anglers and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something you shouldn't have to think about, like, because that's just been, like, from the safety side of things. I mean, I'm not being funny. We're going to catch some of these, it's own shit. Let's be honest about it. It's a fish. In the grand scheme of things, it's a fish. Some of us do it for a living, some a hobby, some to get away from the home life, and some because it's a lifestyle. But at the end of the day, it's a fish. Let's not get too caught up about that. But at no point should it make you put in a position like that. So, freak incident's going to happen. It's one of those things.
Life,
but it does. You are right in that when you do something like that, for sure it pinpoints where you are, because I can see how many views them stories we're getting and how much interaction, and I know how many people have seen it, and I don't know any of them from Adam. Maybe 5 of them, you know. So that's something to think about. Maybe that's for everybody. Like, it's not just me. Like, for everybody, something to think about for the future. Maybe.
Trickiest venue you fished in that time?
So it's difficult because day tickets are usually, when you think of a day ticket, you think of high stock, lots of fish, pretty easy to catch. So I wouldn't say the venues were tricky. Like, in the grand scheme of things, like, obviously your orchids, your old mill lakes, your linears, that sort of thing. Your Cromwells. I wouldn't say that the rock solid lakes, because that's not what day tickets are designed for.
No, you would have right.
But what I would say is that the time of the year I went to certain lakes, that's what made it hard. Like, I remember So I'd done Orchid. That was hard, like rock solid. That was the hardest, based on the conditions I had and the venue. Like, people say it's got good winter form. It has. It's very good in winter, but it's very good in the autumn, late autumn. Once you get to Jan and Feb and March, when it freezes over and the water temperatures drop right down, you can still catch the odd one if you're going to do the time, but it's not a gimmick. Like, it's not an out and out. You're hauling 30-pounders. Yeah. Like November time, October, fine, it's brilliant, but you can still catch, but it's very difficult. So that would be the hardest thing based on what I had to deal with. Yeah. You know, there was others. One of them, like the one that kicked me in the nuts, and at this point I hadn't blanked, was end of January, I think it was. I went back down. So I'd done Churchgate Lakes in Essex.
Yeah, I know.
Jodie's place. Yeah, I love Jodie. I'd fished the top lake in the September. Yeah. Had an unbelievable session. Like, caught some of the bigger ones in there. It got a bottom lake as well, and it's got a middle lake, but the bottom lake was stacked with fish. So I think that lake had got the biggest fish in, but it got the most fish. So it got the volume. So it come to February, and most of the country was frozen. And I'm on Jodie, like, you freeze, like, there's a bit of cat house around the back end, but most of it's free. And we had some mild weather coming up, so I thought that'll go. So I'm like, not a gimme, but this is not one that's going to trip me up. Yeah. So I've gone down there, travelled 3 hours to Essex, 2 nights blanked. Like, kicking the nuts.
Which lake is that? The first lake on the right?
The first lake on the right. So, like, out of all the venues I've been to, and the time, like, one session I'd done, it froze around most places. I went to 3-day tickets around here and ended up at Norton Disney on the deep lake, which was half frozen. Wow. Luckily managed to catch one on a long sig. But I'd done all that, and then the one that I hadn't put my money on it, like, I'd stumbled on, and it just went back to the thing that no matter how many fish are there, when they don't want it, and you've tried your best, because I tried, like, it's not as if I didn't try. Like, I'm serious, I tried that trip. I moved that chucked everything that I could, and it just wasn't. It was a time of the year, too much cold water, and the other one was Majestic Pool. Like, I fished Majestic a few years ago for Carp World. Had a really good session. That was in February. Had 2 or 3 fish for that feature. Went back this winter. I think it had froze the week before, defrosted, done no bites, turned up, and I blanked on that session. You know, and the weather was good, but unfortunately we'd had 2 or 3 weeks of substantial cold weather, which had knocked it on the head, because we all know that it's the water temperature. Regardless of what happens with you, you'd need 2 or 3 weeks of that mild temperature to raise the water temperature to give yourself a chance. So the water temperature was still too low. And again, I blanked on there. So I wouldn't necessarily say, there's been harder lakes out there, I fished obviously, but day ticket wise, it would be difficult to answer which one's difficult.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to talk about a couple of complexes, day ticket complexes, that you've spent a fair bit of time. One aspect, obviously, is with tuitions, but also your own angling. And we'll start with one that is it in casting distance? Probably not. Maybe for you. That's Trent View, mate. You spent a fair bit of time on there, boy, haven't you?
8 years or so now.
Have you?
Yeah, so before it opened, they had a test fished that. Didn't fish it for a couple of years because I was off doing other bits, and then started going there on a regular basis probably 8 years ago, which led into taking tutorials on there. It lends itself perfectly for it, because the thing with Trent View is, and it has changed over the years, like we've already mentioned, with the pressure, the fish have got a little bit wary, and it's not as clubbing them like it used to be. But there is a lot of different elements to fishing on there. For example, people who haven't dealt with particularly deep lakes before get into a shock, because the main bowl on average is probably 20 to 22 foot. Okay. And in places goes down to 30, 35 foot. Like, and these ledges are sheer cliffs as well, to the point where if you drop a rig in that deep water, and wind back in, and you hook the end of it, that's it. You're knackered. That's how sheer these ledges are. So if you haven't dealt with that before, there's also a dog leg which goes down to 3 feet deep, comes out to 4, 5, 6, 7, then leads out to the main bowl. So you can imagine that gets weed from top to bottom because it's clear. Angling pressure has gone through the roof. So Trent View is very productive, but you have to hit it right in the right peg, doing the right tactic at the right time. Back in the day when you could move around, it wasn't so busy, but naturally the fish aren't going to be as big. Now you've got nearly 130 pounders and a handful of 40 swimming in there.
But did you say the overall stock's 2,000?
2,000 fish. Oh, that's what it says anyway. That's what they put in initially, was 2,000.
And how big is it?
It's 29 acres, I think it is. But because of the depth of water, you may as well be fishing in 59 acres. Like, it does present its problems. Do you know if that lake was 10, 12 foot all over, the whole lake would fish mega all the time. But it's very peggy and very spotty. And don't get me wrong, out of 47 anglers, if you fill that lake in the summer, if 15 anglers caught,
really,
that's how, because either the nature of the deep water and people either not having the experience or the how to fish like on the top properly adjustable zigs, that sort of thing, where you're nicking bites. If you don't get in the dog leg, railway bank, round to peg 22, which is car park, bit shallower water, or on the end of the wind, it can be a struggle, but that's only down to the depth. Like, you know what carp are like. Would they rather sit in 6 foot of water when it's blazing sunshine, or would they rather sit in 30 foot of water? But then you're looking on straight under the surface, it presents its problems, and as prolific as it can be, like the sessions that I've mentioned to you that I've had have just been a joke.
You said 70 off camera, 70 fish in a hit?
Yeah, I did. Basically, I took a week's annual leave. When I was working full time, I took a week's annual leave. So I did Monday to Friday. And I had 3 back-to-back tuitions.
Okay.
So I booked peg 47, fished a night with 1 client, 2 clients, 3 clients. So I did, Monday night, Tuesday, was it 4 nights I did. And yeah, like the weather, everything hit, like everything aligned. Like the peg that year was in the right position on the lake that had just been dug for that year. The weather conditions were mega. It was end of October. Like the fish wanted bait, and we gave them bait. Like I've gone from mentioning like I'm now fishing for a bite at a time, which I am. But back then, I mean, this was 4 years ago now. So Trent View wasn't at its peak by nowhere near like the standards. You were still fishing for 20s with the occasional 30 at this time. So it wasn't as, and Ian's feeding the pellets with like the lake with pellets, which most lakes do these days, don't they? Like, the 25 kilo sacks, or the 20 kilo sacks, I think they are. And he was bringing them round to me. I put two of them in, like a load of boilies, but caught the same amount of fish for the same kilo of bait that I went through on that particular occasion. But I had the time, the stock of fish were there, I was getting bites. There's no way I was putting that in if the bites dried up, but they wanted it and I gave it to him. And that's, things have taken a change on there, I think, over the last 2 or 3 years. Like, it's become more popular.
Yeah.
It very rarely gets a break now.
Yeah.
So there's anglers on it all the time. They've been clubbed to death, them fish now, and don't get me wrong, you can still go down and get a decent hit. We've done it recently. If you fish, but you have to fish it right in the right swim at the right time to do those big hits. Now, don't get me wrong, 5-10 fish hits are a regular occurrence from people who get in the right peg at the right time. But I'm talking 30, 40, 50 fish hits that weren't regular but happened occasionally, have now slowly started to dwindle away. Okay. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, like I said, I can't talk too much because it's going to come out on film this year, but like the session we've just had, we had a boatload on a multitude of different tactics, but the fish were there. Like, if they're not there, you can't catch them, and with so many fish, they are shoal fish, pack fish, and when you get one on, you feed him. I can guarantee you, I don't know how many, but I guess there's another 50 with it feeding at the same time. So it's one of those venues that presents a lot of problems, but if you get it right, you can have the session of a lifetime.
It also sounds like the being able to be versatile, i.e. fish your zigs, but then also fish on the bottom, and then also, if you're struggling, sort of nick a bite and scratch around. That's the type of complex whereby you'll be effective because you can make it happen. Whereas it's not like one-dimensional, is it? You're going to have to do a bit there if they've got clued up.
Yeah, the good thing is the car's behind you. So if you only fish with your rods out and don't commit to a swim till it's time to, you can have the whole day there keeping you on the water. And if you're not on them, it takes 2 minutes to wind your rods in and drive around the lake to get on them. So that's a bonus that normally you see people turn up, they put the house up, they get, and they're in then, aren't they? Like that's them for the session where if you can not set up your bivvy and bed, and this is something that Nick Forward told me and showed me like years and years ago on the park and on Bleasby, like he's always fishing days. He fishes days. All the stuff's in his van. He's fishing a day, whether that's floater fishing, doing whatever, moving around there, getting on him. And then when he's happy that he's on him for the night, then he goes back to the car and gets his bed chair and pivot. And there's so many occasions that I can think of where that's rubbed off on me. When we were talking about people who have rubbed off on me in the past, that's rubbed off on me, and it's staying on your toes on them busy day tickets, because if an opportunity presents itself where an angler moves and goes home, you need to be the first one round there, because them lakes are rammed. Like, and I'm not talking, not necessarily saying you've got the best anglers in the country all under one roof as them anglers, like who have seen those fish, and like these guys are just going to turn up for their session like that they do every week just to get out the house and for their own and just jump in that swim, not even knowing what is there. So that's what you're up against. And if you adapt your tactics, like I've caught them on single bags, single up baits, spodding, mixers, adjustable zigs, over depth zigs.
All the times of the year as well.
Winter time it gets patchy. It does fish well in the winter because of depths.
Yeah.
So compared to most lakes, it still does bites, adjustable zigs, bait. Like it fishes really well. Certainly the back end of the year, because what happens is those sort of upper layers start to cool down. It forces the fish down through the thermocline. They get to the bottom. Everybody clubs them for a few weeks while they're down there. The minute you get them real harsh frost for a prolonged period of time, all the bottom cools down. Naturally, the fish are then going to move up, and then adjustable zigs come in, and that's normally January, February. Don't get me wrong, you still catch them off the bottom, but it becomes patchy then. But it has really good form, like that I've noticed up through till January, and then Feb can be a bit sticky depending on weather conditions. But compared to most lakes, because of the volume of fish, it has really got winter form. So if anybody's looking for a winter ticket, it's not a car behind you. Loads of nice scaly fish, big uns, good for a bite. Is it?
What's in there size-wise? You said 130s.
It's coming up close to 130s. Now, there's probably over, bearing in mind that the 2,000 fish, you're not going to get them all, are you? 5 big uns, gutsy, which I'm not going to talk about.
This just got me, mate. He's lost his head on this off camera.
Just had one of the last 2 trips I'd on there. I had Rob's fish, which was one of, I don't want to say original, but one of the original fish big uns that pushed through the ranks to get where it is. And again, for as many fish as I've caught on there in the amount of time I've done, like, in all honesty, I haven't caught many of the big uns. Like, that is the biggest I've caught. I've had a few 30s now.
How big's Rob's fish?
£35 it was. It's done up to 40 before, 41. But I haven't caught not on it because I don't for 1 second believe that on there, fishing for numbers is the right way to go about it. I've seen it no end of times where somebody's turned up, gone in a corner where there's no lines, chucked a single up bait out and caught the big one.
Right.
Like, I don't believe for a second by smashing 70 fish out or 40 fish it or 30 fish it, I'm not sure it's the way to go for them big ones on there. If you're committed to realising that you're not going to catch the numbers and you're fine with that, but you're going to go in the corner and chance your luck, I'm not saying you're going to catch him, but I would probably think that you're going to catch him. A zig, something like that, maybe catch him, but I've had far too many big hits now that have included no big fish. Like my tuition client, I said to you, it took me well over 200-300 fish to get a 30 out of it. I mean, granted, when I first started, they weren't in there.
Yeah.
But finally, to catch my 30, I took my last tuition client on there. He had 2 fish, 2 30s, up to £33. So the fish are coming through, but everything's got to align and luck's got to be on your favour. And as much as we've spoke about me getting a job done in 4 trips on the Ivo and Strawberry 2, this has been a complete different story because Gutsy started off at upper 20s, low 30s when I first started fishing it.
The name gets me, mate.
I know, it's a wrong name for the fish, but
it's a beautiful fish.
It's an incredible fish for the name. I don't know who named it, but anyway. And what happened was it got to about £36 when I first started properly fishing the place. And I can remember I could have had it first session. So I've gone in this swim. I've had 5 or 6 fish first trip that I did. And some 2 guys come in my swim afterwards and said, have you caught out? And like, nice guys, really nice guys. I said, yeah, I've had a few. Like, I'm casting, like, my own fault, really, but again, I help anybody. So I said, yeah, towards that tree, like 16 wraps. I've had 6 fish off of it. There still should be a bit of bait there. Been fishing with such and such. No worries, mate. Like, we're going to drop in here then. I said, yeah, no worries. And I left. Then I went and caught it off 16 wraps, showing them exactly the following day. So that was the first. I'm not saying I'd have caught it if it had still been there, but I kind of feel like I'd have had a good chance. It then happened again on the opposite side of the lake. I'd had 16 fish this time, or 18 fish in a couple of days. Guy comes up, so I'm fishing there, yeah, solid bag, white up. You think I'd learn my lesson. Solid bag, white up bait, blah, blah, blah. Next morning, solid bag, white up bait gets caught on from out that peg.
So that's the next bite?
It's the next person who's gone in the swim. I don't know if it's the next bite that I had, but certainly the next day or whenever he started fishing. And then the last time it got caught when it was £45 and it was in mega condition was during I think it was the June of one year, and it hadn't been out. I knew it was getting close. I think I was due down on the Monday for a tuition and it got caught on the Saturday from a similar sort of area of the lake. Again, but looking at it, I was like, I wish I'd have just been there. Like, maybe I'd have half a chance or at least been able to see it, because I'm not saying that fish is do or die for me. And
it is though, isn't it, mate?
Considering what I've been through, I would like it. Like I would.
He said to me off camera,
like
right? Cut the podcast. He said to me off camera, he did lose his head a bit, but he said he'd trade 80% of your album for that fish.
Yeah, based off of what?
That's madness, mate.
Honestly, based off what it put me through, the location of where it is and the time I've done on it, and seeing that fish grow and being so close to it, I would want it based on the fact that I feel like that's got one up on me, and I don't like that. Like,
but that's by the sounds of it. I know you said about a couple of big ones being caught away from the main packs in the corners, but he doesn't sound like one of them. If he's coming at the back end of some of these hits, he's there or thereabouts, and it's just pot luck.
He's completely pot luck. Like, honestly, like you can. I mean, the thing is for me now, I only go 3-4 times a year, tuition or a quick session here where I've not got a lot of time, so. It's different if you go in every single week, because at some point you can afford to drop in on those quiet little corners that have got the wind blowing in them and take a chance for a night. But when you go on a one-off, for me to commit to that, when I know I can go in the middle of the lake in the autumn, put some bait out and gain the confidence that much that I've got the spot rocking and catch a few, it's difficult to pull yourself away from that, because I'm not saying it won't get caught on a big hit, but for me personally, my experience of doing it, I haven't been anywhere close to it. Like by fishing that particular way, like I would hazard a guess that the people who get 2 or 3 fish hits of a bigger stamp is what it's going to come fall to. Like fishing solid bags over pellet and crumb, you're just asking for everything to come to the party, you know. But for me, I've just not got the time, the desire to go and sit there week in, week out in a corner with 15mm boilies and hope and pray that it comes, because it might never come with 2,000 carp in it. You know, so
I reckon it's worth going down there, 3 single hook baits and just whacking them out there.
Trouble is, mate, when you look around the lake and everywhere, like getting it that, and you sat there thinking, oh, you know,
I just faced my bivvy the other way, mate. No, mate, it's hard with that volume of fish, as you're saying, but that is the quest, mate. The quest lives on. I'm waiting for that photo to come up on Insta, mate. He's traded 80% of his album for it. Incredible.
All right, listen, maybe I've gone a bit too far, but yeah, that is it is one that I would like to catch. Whether I do or not is another matter, but that is one that.
What happens if it came out on a tuition to one of your clients?
Mega. No, don't get me wrong. There'd be naturally inside of you. I wouldn't be jealous. I wouldn't be anything like that.
I'll be. Yeah.
No. I wouldn't. Jealous is a harsh word, mate. I don't like. For me, don't get me wrong, I would wish to be in that position, but I wouldn't say...
You'd have a picture with it as well,
yeah, I wouldn't be going, oh, mate, can't believe you caught that, I'm pissed, like, chucking stuff, like, I wouldn't do, like, I'd be genuinely buzzing for the person, and if he's on my tuition and I've given the guidance to catch that, even better, do you know what I mean? Like, but, yeah, I would truly, truly love to catch that carp.
I hope you have it, mate. You deserve it. 8 years is a fair old stint on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I've sat 8 years on a lake and that's where I've been for 8 years. You know what I mean? I'm talking 3 or 4 sessions a year, so I don't want it that bad to go and do that, you know?
It's a chunk of time, mate, isn't it? Another complex, and I think this one I'd seen on a fair few stories, especially with tuition guests and stuff as well, is Old Mill. These are 2 complexes, Trent View and Old Mill, which I literally have not fished. I need to, because there are some mega fish in them, mate. Talk to me about Old Mill, mate.
So I first went there for, I think it was Luca, you know, his 20th birthday. So we're talking 11 years ago now.
Luke, this is Luke Vardy. He happens to have the tightest jeans of any human on the planet. Incredible.
And the smallest human.
You still wear them? Nah, he's a good lad. He looks like, I can't remember what I called him, like a boy band member, doesn't he?
He does look like he's out of Backstreet Boys, yeah.
Yeah.
Proper hair slick back, blonde highlights.
Oh, Vardy, what an absolute legend. Imagine his podcast.
Give him a look on Instagram. So we went down for his birthday, and the lake then, it was just birch. Like, there was birch and willow, sorry. So willow was at the back, dug. Birch was 1/2 dug.
Right.
And Chris had basically built the whole thing from scratch. I'm talking the house, the lakes, everything scratch. So he stocked them. I think they were single figures, like 5-6 pounders, 8 pounders, these fish. Kept it close for a little bit, grew them on until I think some of them tripped 30 pounders when he first opened birch.
Wow.
I don't think even he anticipated just how big those fish in them lakes would grow. But obviously over time, what you've got now is Chris has got his house done. Yeah. You've got Alder Lake, which is like a lake exclusive. You get the whole lake, but the cabin and the hot tubs as well. So that comes in your price included. It's like a getaway for 3 or 4 nights. Yeah. So that's quite nice. You've got Willow Lake, which it's probably my favourite lake on the complex. I'm not going to lie. It's one of the smaller ones. 6 pegs on one bank. Brilliant for a social. In my opinion, from my experience, the hardest lake on the complex as well.
Why is that?
They've been in there for as long as some of the birch fish have. So they've been in there now for 10, 12 years. They've seen everything again. Because you can fish from one bank, everyone tends to do the same thing. It's got a bit more depth in the middle. It's up and down like a bowl. In the summer, the ends get weedy. And I just think they've seen it all a bit more. So they're a bit more cagey, but I like that. So that's my favourite lake and probably the hardest. And you've got Birch, which is like a membership day ticket style lake. So you pay a membership, get invited to join and pay day tickets on top of that, but you have to be recommended for that.
That's got some monsters.
That's got the big ones. It's 460s. Jeez. I don't want to say how many 50s and joke. I mean, I've done 2 trips on it this year. First trip I had 5 fish, couple of little stockies that Chris had put in to grow on. I had a 37 mirror and a 41 mirror. And my second trip, I had 1 fish just under £47.
Jeez.
Like joke of a anyway. So you've got Birch, and then you've got Oak, which is one of the newest lakes, which, you know, it's just a bowl, a rectangle bowl, 7 pegs on either side. To look at, doesn't look particularly inviting, but if you want a big fish, like 500 fish in there, over 130 pounders.
Wow.
Like, the odds are in your favour. Like, most times I go down there. Now, if you want a bigger fish and you're not bothered about, you know, what they look like, where they're from, like the credentials of it, you just want to go fishing and enjoy yourself and it don't matter, Oak is one to look at because it fishes all year. You can catch them even in the coldest of weather. There's a lot of them and there's a lot of big ones. If you get an 8 fish catch, 10 fish catch, you could probably bet that you get a 30 pounder. So if you want your first 30, and that's what matters, it's a brilliant venue to go for. So Chris has kind of catered, he's kind of got the whole thing on lockdown in terms of size of fish. You know, that Birch is just a phenomenal lake. You know, like I said, we first went on it when Birch was, it used to be one half, then he dug a new half to Birch, and it used to have a channel going through and a bridge over the spit. So you had an old side, a new side, and you fish from the middle and the edges.
Yeah.
That middle's now been taken out, and it's one big lake now. And consequently, since he's done that, like the wind, it gets more wind on it. There's more space, and there was fish have gone from, sounds stupid, gone from like 2 or 3 50s, which sounds ridiculous on its own, to 4 60s.
How
like,
big's that lake?
10
I was going to say it ain't like 25 acres.
No, it's. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like in my experience of carp fishing, the smaller lakes generally have kicked me in the nuts more than the bigger lakes because they see everything all the time. But yeah, like one of the fish riggers, I had just under £49, and that was 5 years ago, common, and that's now £63. Like the fish have just grown on. Like they're putting a good quality bait in there, like feed bait from Trent. He's expanded the water, and the fish have just.
Didn't the Fox boys do something on there?
They did a filming. The filming project, but again, they weren't that big. They were 50s, and I think a couple of them.
Big. Where have you been?
You know what I mean? Like this is what I'm saying. Anywhere else, you'd be saying like mass, but there, it's a freak. Like
it's madness.
So again, but I cut my teeth on that complex, and like I mentioned about Willow it hasn't got as big a like now. It's got 7 or 8 40s in it. Willow. Bearing in mind, when I first went there, the first session I did on it, it hadn't done a 30. The first session I went on it,
right,
and I caught 3 23s, and the next bite was the big mirror, which it is now, and I had it at 31.6. So I had the first 30 pounder out of Willow, and that fish is now 44 pound.
Crazy,
like just ridiculous. Like most, like not all the fish, but I've caught a lot of fish out of Birch and Willow these days, like but at a much smaller weight. I don't fish it as much regularly these days. I do a lot of tutorials on Oak, but there's some monsters.
That's mad. He's clearly done an incredible job on the complex. I definitely need to go and visit him. The sort of that type of complex. There's many. You mentioned Trent View before. The depth of it being quite unique in terms of it's quite deep. You've got some sharp ledges. You've got all that. Old Mill, you've got a fair few lakes, I would say. You've talked about the topography being a bit up and down, but that are quite weed-free, quite accessible. I think of places that I have fished like that, like RH Fisheries, Monument 2. There's not a great deal of weed growth or anything out there. On those type of venues, those type of lakes, for you, have you found that you make certain adjustments to deal with the sort of, because if you go to a weedy venue and you've got a clear spot, invariably it's telling you not where to fish or where you can present. On those venues which are like relatively sort of barren in terms of what to fish to. There's a lot of options, a lot of different ways that you can do things. You can try and fill it in and make bait your feature. You can maybe look for a difference in topography. How do you go about those type of lakes?
So if we're talking about Old Mill on its own, so Birch itself has got a lot of islands in it. So you have got a lot of features in there. It does get weedy in the summer, ridiculously weedy in the summer. So that is kind of what you were talking about. But Oak on the flip side, that doesn't see any weed. So what again, that's gone through a transition period. So when it first sort of opened, you were looking at doubles and the odd 20, because originally it was dug for fill it in with a load of fish and let anybody go and catch a load of them to enjoy themselves. That's what it was for. Little did Chris know that all of a sudden it would blossom into a monster. Like, in my opinion, over the next few years, Oak will take over Birch.
Really?
Yeah, because it gets much more wind, it's more open, sees more bait. I think Oak will eventually take over. And that's what happened over the next few years. So my first session bearing in mind it had 1,000 fish in this 8-acre bowl, and the first time I went to fish it for Chris, I think I had 50 fish and I had 1 20-pounder. So that puts into perspective. Bearing in mind I did a full lake exclusive tutorial booking this year with 14 anglers, all 14 of us caught. We had 46 fish and 8 over 30 pound.
Right. So
that's the difference in 5 years ago and now, and the calibre. It's got a fish over there now which is over 50 pound in Oak. You're looking at 3, maybe 4 40s, and like I said, over 130s. When you've got a stock of 500 to 600 carp, you do the maths, the averages are pretty high. So going about that, it used to be all about the MPEGs. Like, it used to be MPEGs, wherever the wind was blowing, new fish, new lake, they got on the end of them and clubbed them. What I've found now over the past, and I'm probably shooting myself in the foot because I've got to go next year, but what I've found now is, and this isn't always the case, but the middle swims are tending to produce, when I'm there anyway, the better fish when I've fished, or just off centre. If that makes sense. Like, those M swims generally do the most bites. And I'm not saying the big ones don't come from there, because they do, but they generally do the most bites, but the middle to off centre tends to be
the better fish. And what I also found is, a lot of the time, back in the day I was fishing with solid bags, everything to the party, catching loads. What I've done now is come off the bags onto D-rigs so they can reset themselves with match the hatch wafters, no pellets, straight boilers, half baits, that type of thing, little patches of that, and feed into a bite with, I don't know, half a kilo of bait, say, on each rod, because there's a lot of fish in there. And my average stamp, like I said, every time, if I get 15 fish hit, chances are there's at least 2 30-pounders within that 15 fish hit. So the lakes change, but also the fish have adapted and the tactics have adapted over that time. I'm not like, you'll still catch now using like bags and little mesh bags and stuff, definitely. But for me, what has been the game changer throughout last year and up in the average fish side was match the hatch and straight boilers. You done anything lead system wise differently to account for that type of menu? I'm not talking just generally on that lake, but I'm talking about where it's not weedy and you've got that sort of clearer type bottom topography.
Yeah, I think in the past Chris has had issues with day ticket anglers lead systems. So things have changed a bit over the years. So now it's tubing, lead clips only. Don't get me wrong, when I'm fishing Birch, I'm dropping that lead every time because you never know what's on the end of it. But Oak, you don't, like, if your lead clip's set up properly, you know, if it goes into, it's not going to hit any weed and any snags in it whatsoever. So dropping your lead, it's completely down to you. But certainly in Birch and Willow, I'm dropping my lead because I'm not risking anything there. But lead system is it's hard, but you can still fish solid bags with a lead clip. You just put a short link on the exact same, like, and fish a solid bag if you wanted to do that.
You can't fish them running.
You can't fish them running anymore now.
No.
But for me, like I said, because that was the thing back then, I kind of feel now that they've wised up to that. And you still catch them, obviously, but for me now, boilie all the way. But just because it's boilie and pellet, you can still do things differently. Like, if you want to put an actual bottom bait on and just take some of the edges off it so it looks like a misshape and cut your baits in half, it's different to just filling it in with bait. You can still put your kilos of bait in if you're catching, for sure. Feed to what you're catching, but just do something slightly different with your chops and stuff. Like, just make it a little bit different, because that might be the difference between you catching 10 fish and catching 5 fish, for example. Putting the odds in your favour. So those lakes have changed over the years. Some mega carp in them now, and yeah, like just love the place. To be fair, like it's one of them. And again, because I've grew up on there, same as Trent View, same as Bleasby, like
it's got
around this area. Like you do get venues that you will always visit, because then you build up a relationship. Like Chris has been a mate now for 10 years. Ian's a good friend at Trent, and you build up a relationship. So there are lakes, and you've probably got your lakes that where you're always welcome. You always get involved, and you probably will always fish them.
One element that is, you deal with a different sort of cross-section all the time of anglers when you take them on tuitions and you spend a concerted amount of time with them. But one thing in the sort of the modern guise of carp fishing is introduction, imports, wrong-uns, all that sort of hold the bait. Now, for you do a lot of day ticket fishing. There are a lot of day tickets that have sprouted up over the last period of time, obviously with a commercial interest, because that's what it's about. The introduction of fish, where do you sit on that whole thing? I'm guessing that you fish for what you fish for and you're happy with what with what you get. Is that a fair assessment? You know what you're fishing for. It is what it is. It fulfills very much a purpose and a need.
Mate, I've got scaly ones, fat ones, long ones, thin ones, dark ones, pale ones. I've got all sorts in my photo album from everywhere I've been. Each to their own. It's completely personal on an individual basis. If it's a carp and it swims, I'll go and fish for it. Like, it does not, genuinely, because what I think people are slowly starting to find out now is those ones that are your iconic, true English fish, shall we say, they aren't going to be around forever. So at some point, people are going to need other fish to fish for. For me, I don't want to sit there and broadcast, this is right, that's right, this is right, and then be in that position when that comes to that time and be like, where am I going to go now? Because the minute you go on a venue like that, you're criticised. So for me, it's never been like those originals at Bleasby, the Lynn. I love them as much as going and catching whatever out of another day ticket lake, because if I'm happy, and this is all down to the person, if you're happy doing what you're doing, like everyone's got an opinion, but leave people be and let them do what they want to do and what they want to fish for. If you think it's wrong, no problem. Like everybody's different, but for me, it's a carp, and so long as I'm happy and I'm enjoying myself at the place, that's what it's about. We've said before, it's just a carp. As long as you're happy doing what you're doing and you're not affecting anybody else, that's what it is.
It is a massive bonus when you look at it from like the wider picture. Like the fact that anybody who is, I don't know, might have a real busy home life, mad work schedule, can go to venues now and access the size of fish, if you like, in terms of weight, that are massive, big fish that they've seen on mega videos or that have inspired them. There's definitely been no other time where there's been so many big fish around. And as you say, there is that, I think, in the sort of immediate recent time, that that's become more accepted, I think, all that. I don't think it's as, do you know what I mean? I remember one point in time, I can't, when big rig and around all that capture, where it was just mad, wasn't it? And nowadays it seems that whole thing is, everybody's sort of chilled out on it and has sort of gone, as you've just said, if you're happy, just crack on.
Mate, do you know what? I've got the utmost respect for anybody that decides to go and target or do anything. And the history of our sport with those fish, I've got as much respect for the lads that go and do that and catch them as possible. Like, I've done it with the linen. Like, it's all relative now to this day and age. And for me, I've got no opinions on what's right or what's wrong. So long as the person and the individual is enjoying their sport, for me, nobody's carp fishing is more important than anybody else. If you're happy doing what you're doing, then do not worry about what anybody else says or what you should be doing or what's right and what's wrong. Go and enjoy yourself and just go carp fishing, because that's what it's about.
Moving on from day tickets, mate, we're going to talk careers. You've had quite the career, mate. From the NHS to policing to angling direct to being full-time sponsored angler and angler coordinator as you are now at RidgeMonkey, mate. That's a lot of change, a lot of different sectors. For you, you talked earlier about the sponsored angler role, wanting to make a career, if you like, in fishing and angling. When did that vision become sort of plausible, or think that it could actually happen for you?
So initially, when I left school, did my GCSEs, got an apprenticeship at the NHS. Someone worked in the NHS. I got an apprenticeship in it. And leaving that point in my life at 16, 17, 18 years old, I'd always got told, we all have aspect. I remember my dad saying to me, Loz, there's no money in carp fishing, mate. Like, you're going to have to go and get a better job. So I always believed that. And to a degree, he was right. But at that time, I'd always wanted to be involved with the police. So for the guys out there saying he's a pig, I wasn't. I wasn't a copper. I was a support staff member for the police, and that was the role that I went into.
Right.
To do to what I wanted to progress in as a career.
Yeah.
You know, we all make our choices, and so I did that for 10 years. But within that 10 years at the police, the sponsored anglers sort of role with Corda came about. Then the tuition started. Then the Carp World magazine writing for them started. And at that point, it was like, what do I want to do? Like, I really want this, but it was like, in the end, I think I was that persistent with it, like rightly or wrongly, that I not forced my way into where I am now, but kind of paved the way for where I am now, if that makes sense. Like, it got to a point where I was traveling up and down the country all weekends, or like doing my job with the police, going fishing for the weekend, and it just got too much in the end. And then what happened was Luke, that we've already mentioned, joined AD, assistant manager, and I was doing my tuitions, and he said to me, look, I've got a part-time job at the store. Like, do you want it? Sure, you'd be brilliant for it. You know all about your angling. You can sell, and you can do your tuitions to make a full-time job. And I was like, bit of a gamble, like massive gamble after 10 years. Let's go for it. Like, you don't, unless you take a risk, you don't get the reward in life. And if I hadn't have taken that risk then, I'm a firm believer that in everything that you've done in your past paves for what you are today. And by taking that chance and that risk, it's paid off. And, you know, I joined AD and had 18 months there, loved it. Like, with the lads I worked with were absolutely incredible. I was doing my tuitions as well to obviously make up my income to what I was losing. But obviously at the time I was gaining experience as well. Yeah. RidgeMonkey came in and basically said to me, look, we want to take you on as a sponsored angler. So at that point I wasn't with anybody. I'd had best part of a year out, maybe a bit more than a year, just doing my own thing. Like, I'd had a lot on within the previous few years and a bit burnt out, and was having a break, you know? Yeah. So after a year, RidgeMonkey got in touch, and I was like, do I want to go down this route again? Like, I'm enjoying myself. I've got the jobs, I've got the tuitions. I'm happy in my carp fishing. I can do what I want. And like, at the time, JT said to me, we want you on board. Like, there's no pressure. Like, we just want you to be with us, enjoy being with us, and enjoy fishing. I thought, you know what? Like, let's do it. So yeah, I joined RidgeMonkey. Best decision I ever made. Looking at it now, RidgeMonkey, without Paul, like, giving me like this opportunity, I wouldn't be in the position that I am now. And that is now up to me to obviously remain in that position and show that I'm worthy of being, because this industry, you know what it's like. You need to show your worth. So hopefully, I can show that the risk taking me on board was worth it, and we can move the company forward. But he took me as a sponsored angler, and I had a year doing that.
Full time?
I was a sponsored angler. Yeah, I wasn't getting paid. I was just getting my kit.
Oh, so you just... Okay,
I was just a normal sponsored
part of the team,
So, but I was still with AD and doing my tuitions at this point. Okay. And then what happened was I got a phone call from Paul saying a year later, we've got this little job for you. Do you want it? I was like, well, I need to know how much you're offering and whether it's right for me and what's entailed with it. So I need to come up for a bit of a meeting. So we organised a meeting, and I went up and he said, this is our taxes one. Look, we want you to be sort of our angling tutorial person, coach, if you like. Yeah. We've got this idea of filming on Instagram every week for live sessions. We don't know what it's going to be called yet. Would you be up for it? And again, it was that situation where I thought, part-time, risk, do I take it? And I thought, you know what, it paid off at AD and it paid off at the thing. I'm happy, I'm settled. Do I want it? And I was like, it's too big of an opportunity to turn down. So I jumped into it, part-time role, and that's where Tactics was born from. So then Tactics ran on for, oh God, how long did it run on for now? 14, 15 months, eh?
Yeah, a long time.
And then what happened was I put my heart and soul into it, and obviously they seen that, they were pleased with it and decided to take me on, full time. So now I'm part of the marketing team, as well as doing the angling coaching role, and then running our team of sponsored anglers as well. So the role has changed slightly, a lot more in depth as a full-time role. And honestly, I couldn't be happier. Like, I'm so pleased for the opportunity that they gave me, and it's up to me now, I suppose, to progress with that and hopefully, build RidgeMonkey to what it deserves to be.
That, and you've clearly done incredibly well throughout the whole course of it. To anybody who can carve a path sort of in the industry, it isn't easy, and to call it a full-time job is an achievement in itself. But for you, you've always been, and I think it's very fair to say, you've always, when you've seen that opportunity, or you've always worked towards an opportunity to work within the industry. I've seen you busy on social media. I've seen you very much not orchestrate it, because it hasn't been that blatant, but you've definitely wanted it, and you always struck me as a bloke who knew that he wanted that. Not that anybody really falls into the industry, but you know what I mean? You could see that your social media presence was mega. You were busy, like you said, despite a full-time job and other stuff, up and down the country, putting yourself in front of the right people on the venues, catching the fish, doing the right things. When you take that into sort of the modern day form, now that you're in charge of a team of sponsored anglers, do you think there is more emphasis and more people wanting to do that for a living than there was when you got involved, which is probably at the formation of that role? And how has that changed over the course of time, of you being involved in it and then now having to sort of manage a team and make decisions around people who are involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you sat there and said to the people who are listening to this podcast, 80% of them will probably say, I want to be a sponsored angler, because that's what you want to do. Do you know what I mean? When you're fishing, like, don't get me wrong, it's not for everybody. Now, I get that. Some people just want the quiet lifestyle of going fishing for what it is. I appreciate that. But a lot of people, like you see at the shows and stuff, you can see that they want to be involved. So I think these days it's a lot more commercialised these days, a sponsored angler. I think in the past it hasn't been, people knew about them, but it wasn't such a thing as what it is now. I mean, you've got to remember 10, 12 years when I first started, it was this little lad from the Midlands, back arse of nowhere, that nobody knew, paving his way. And I think, I'll be brutally honest, I think that kind of rubbed people up the wrong way sometimes. And that wasn't me trying to be an idiot or upset anybody or anything. It was just, when you want something bad enough, like, you go and achieve it and you go and get it. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you want something bad enough, and these days the sponsored angler's role is, there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you want to be a sponsored angler, it's not for everybody, and I appreciate that, and everybody's different. But if you genuinely want to be part of a team, certainly for the bigger brands or the biggest brands in the industry, there are things that you need to do and be able to do to be in that position, to be noticed, to be part of those teams. So gone are the days of just catching a carp. In the old days, it used to be, you've got a couple of 40-pounders, more than what most people have caught, we'll take you. It used to be judged on what you can catch. These days, it's a lot more than that. The game's moved on; it's commercialised.
What are you saying? What are you looking for?
So, if I'm looking for a person now, and this sounds mental, like, and it's not all about this, but image is a massive thing. Like, right. The image of a person being like clean caught, clean, like not like well presented. Age is a big thing, because for me nowadays, because the sponsored anglers role has moved on, what I'm looking for, or what I want to do with the RidgeMonkey team, is bring younger anglers through to sort of grow into the RidgeMonkey way, to sort of almost like nurture into our mould of what we want, to then make them the next Dave Levy, for example, rather than just choose people. Because let's face it, the guys who have a reputation, who are very, very good anglers, who've been in the game a long time, have been with or are with companies. Like, you know, so you have to look for other routes. There's a lot of good anglers out there. There's a lot of anglers out there who don't necessarily like social media. Like, there's a lot of anglers out there who are a lot better anglers than most people who don't do social media. So the pool is big, but the role isn't for everybody. So not getting into silly things on social media. Again, I can talk through experience. I've been there. Like, I've got involved in stuff in the past that I shouldn't have got involved with. Like, and people see it. You'd be surprised how many people actually see it. So don't get involved in anything on social media. Good quality catch images with a DSLR camera. Yes, your camera phones these days are a lot better. If you can take them with a proper camera, Nikon, Canon, Sony, whatever, you can do a lot more with them. And when it comes to like product shots, so if you, for example, really like a company, say you like RidgeMonkey, for example, and you really like our terminal tackle, go away, take magazine style images, flick through the old magazines and look at how we lay images out on our main profile. Start taking those images during your session, upload them to your profile, tag us in it. We see it, don't worry. And eventually enough, if you bang the drum hard enough and you're out consistently catching, and you haven't got to go away and catch 40, 50 pounders all the time. If you're consistently catching nice fish, whether that be 20s, you can make a 20 pounder, a nice fish with the right camera angle, the right backdrop, and a good quality camera, look incredible. And if you can do that on a consistent basis, tag the companies in who you like, whether that with product shots and everything, and show a company that this is why I deserve to be with your company, because I can do this. That helps. Being good in front of camera, being called upon a lot of these days is YouTube stuff, filming. So being able to talk there confidently in front of camera, this is what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. That helps. A lot of writing if you're doing blogs now, or if you were going to do something with one of the magazines that's still around, you've got to be able to write. So there's a lot of factors involved in being a sponsored angler. The carp catching side of it is, you know, a small percentage of that now. You've still got to be able to catch fish, because ultimately that's what's going to get you recognised. But like I said, it's the other things that come with it that are vastly important. You know, social media is moving on. Like now, Instagram used to be photos. It's now reels. So it's small little video clips. Like, you've got to move with the times, because social media is ever changing. You've got to move with it. But again, I wouldn't know all this and be in this position if I hadn't done it and got the experience of doing it before. And like I said, I'm not saying go on social media and start tying yourself out, because again, when I was 21, I made mistakes. I probably rubbed people up the wrong way, not by being arrogant or anything like that to them, but the way you come across on social media sometimes is maybe not how you want it to come across, but to other people, it'll look a certain way. And I've been thinking of that when I was younger, and I've learned from it. And so when I say clean cut, make sure that it's professional, and you will make a company come in, because like I said, you'll be surprised who is actually watching your social media posts and what's going on.
Yeah, I completely, I think a way of the world, regardless of outside of this industry, is any other job that a lot of people applied for. I've got a couple of mates who applied for a job with a brand, not an angling brand, but again, it was a social media search to go through everything that they put down. It is that sort of climate. Do you think that now more than ever, there is opportunity for somebody to make a career, a wage, live just by fishing, and not by organising a social media marketing team, getting involved in another aspect, whatever it may be? Do you think are we in that age of sort of influencers where you can get paid a little bit by this brand, a little bit by this brand, and just go out and fish for yourself?
Personally, I think we're at the end of it. So I think there are people who are doing that at this moment in time. Eventually, in another 20 years' time, maybe that'll be different. Like, I don't think that'll be around anymore, to be honest with you. I think if you're earning a wage from just fishing these days, you're an exceptional case. For example, your Terry Hearns and that sort of, it's just an exceptional case. So a lot of the time these days, that's what I'm saying, the angling is only a small part of it, because you're either involved in the marketing team, or you're doing sales, or you're in product development, or you bring some other aspect to the table as well as your angling, which the more you've got, the more you can bring to the table, the more acceptable and the more marketable you are to that company. So if you go away, for me, if you go away and you can film your own vlogs. You're very skilled and very educated in using Premiere Pro and editing software. You can build your own films. You know, you've got an eye for photography, so you know what to look for. You are very professional and helpful and on social media. Your social media page looks incredible with these amazing photos, from sceneries to product shots to, you know, because for me, your Instagram profile that's your sort of CV, for example, because most people put the fish and pictures on. So your social media platforms are often your CV, and if they look nice, like, you'd be surprised. You can pave your way in this game, and certainly from a younger perspective now, because I was once one of those younger lads. Like, if you're a young lad sat there now thinking, I want to be a sponsored angler and I want to do this, go for it.
Or girl.
Or girl, yeah, or girl, which is obviously coming more and more. You know, Lauren's just run Carp Angler of the Year, bless her. Like, it's growing, and that's brilliant. So yeah, you're right. If you're a girl or boy and you want to pave your way through to that role, then don't let anybody tell you can't. Go and do it.
What about for you, mate? What's the future? You've done incredibly well. You're in a good sort of position with a good company. You've obviously done a massive hit of the Tactics series. You're now obviously out filming, doing bits, as well as organising the sort of the team. What's the future? What do you want to do? What's the crack?
We've got a lot planned. So the Great Escape's coming back, RidgeMonkey this year, that was massively successful.
Yeah.
So we've got filming all overseas, and again, that's something that I haven't done a lot of.
So you're going out?
Yeah, which excites me. So I'll be going out with Levy, with Lee Randall, and with Jay. So we'll be doing that filming this year, which I'm super excited about. Like, what I do is bread and butter.
Yeah.
And the syndicate fishing, when you've done it for 20 odd years, you kind of do get in a rut with it. And I kind of need that to take me out of my comfort zone sort of situation, because a lot of these dating awards, you turn up, you do the same thing, you're on fish, you'll catch. But to go out there doing something I've never done before, to completely take me away from anything and have to think, like, be in the right mindset for it, I'm buzzing for it, because again, it adds a string to my bow, and it's something I can say that I've done. Like, and everyone has to start somewhere. So if I end up going arse over tit over a boat out there, or I get lost in the middle of wherever we are, fantastic. Because again, it's experience and it's life skills with it. So that's coming back. Tactics, because of the success of the live sessions, is now a YouTube series.
Okay.
So it's still going to be there for people. People can still get involved. But this time, one of the biggest criticisms that I think I had, and I think other people had, was stories only last for 24 hours. So the minute I'm there, if you don't catch that stories when I'm doing it,
it's gone.
It's gone. Unless you catch it on my Instagram and the highlights, which I've done most of them. But YouTube, it's always going to be there. So if you miss a session, and for example, I'm at Trent View or Ormel or Linear, wherever, you can then go back and watch that, and it's there for everybody to see. So it'll still be the same format. There'll be a few series out this year. I've got the first one coming out like within the next month or two. That one's shot in France. So Tactics is going to go from day tickets, which it's primarily about, now it's going to be about the whole thing. So we've got overseas fishing. We're going to have syndicate fishing on Tactics. We're going to have day tickets still on Tactics. And it's going to cover the whole broad spectrum of carp fishing. And you'll see the different mentality and everything going through it. And I hope it comes across like the just different elements completely. Every type of carp fishing presents different problems. And the tactics that you imply on them give you different results. And I want that to come across like, yeah, like that's how you do it. That's how you do it. And I think that's how we're going to grow Tactics moving forward. But now that's coming out next couple of months. The first one, that was at the aquarium. So that was in France.
Nice.
Ben Hodgett's Lake, mega venue, unbelievable carp, really nice carp. So yeah, I'm excited for that one coming out as well. And then obviously we've got the shows. So RidgeMonkey will be at the Brentwood and we'll be at the big one as well. So if you're about, we're doing that. And I've got a syndicate ticket as well, which starts in the summer. Yeah, so I'm on the Folly come summer, which will be nice. Again, a venue I've heard loads about, loads of mates who fished it.
Reedy and Tommy have spent some time on the Folly.
Yeah, it's a mega venue. Again, the carp are mega, and it's a syndicate ticket that now Tactics has finished. I ain't got loads of time, but I've got enough time, hopefully, to again, I'm not targeting individual fish. There's quite a few big ones in there to go at. So I'm super excited for that, as well as the sort of tuition side of it. So I've just got a busy year.
Mate, it sounds like a busy year. They're always busy years for you, but it sounds like a more of a, how can you say, a refresh year, isn't it? You've got new avenues that you're going into. You've sort of mixed the pot up, and you've got a bit of your own fishing by the sounds of it, the syndicate, even if it is sort of infrequent. It's a nice balance by the look of it, mate. Family, the nipper, everything. Mate, life is good, no?
Mega. Honestly, I couldn't wish to be in a better place at the minute, like fishing wise, job wise, everything's fell into place. Yeah, it's mega. Yeah, it's mega, mate. Yeah,
mate, you've worked hard for it. You deserve it. You genuinely have, mate. And it's been an absolute pleasure to pin you down. Thank you so much for letting me into the old home, mate. I've invaded loads of your time. Before you go, you've got your quick fire questions. I don't think I've let you see these, but I have left the room to go to the toilet at one point. So you might have looked. You may, of course, you haven't. Right, you ready?
Go on.
This is about. You know who's let me onto this one. Right, never style your hair again. Or never go fishing again. Which one are you taking? Somebody told me that you spend more time on your hair than I do, mate. And I won't tell you who sent me that text.
Mate, I spend a lot of time on my hair, but nowhere near as much as that perm you've got on your head.
What you there's not a curl on here, mate. That's straight.
Look at state of it.
State of it. It's absolute belter.
That'll be Vardy then.
No, that's not Vardy.
It's not Vardy.
Ah, mate. Somebody's absolutely stitched you up, mate.
I'll definitely never do my hair. I'd shave my head if it meant that.
No, you
genuinely, I would.
That's
genuinely.
not what I've heard.
I think I'd look alright bald.
UK 60 or foreign 80?
UK 60.
I'll behave, really?
Yeah, all day long.
Cutsy.
It's not reaching that way.
You never know. It's not been out for years. Drum and bass or country and western?
Drum and bass.
Yeah. You look like the type.
I don't match Shania Twain.
3 celebs you'd take fishing and why?
Oh, Jesus, Hassan.
Past and present. Can have anyone. Who's a Nottingham legend? Oh, there's a lot of Nottingham legends.
There is a lot of Nottingham legends. Do you know what? I would take Ryan Yates, who's in the Forest team. He's not a legend, but I would genuinely like to take him fishing.
He's not a celeb.
He is a celeb. Yeah, I'd take Ryan Yates. I'd take... I don't know, I'm struggling with this.
This is good. This is what they're there for.
I'm struggling with this.
Celebs, I can't imagine what else you're into.
I don't know.
John Frieda, Vidal Sassoon.
No, not for me.
Icons, mate, in the hairstyling game.
Fergie.
Would you?
Yeah, take Sir Alex Ferguson. Yeah, definitely.
What?
For just for what he's done in the game. Again, mindset's that kind of thing.
How do I catch Gutsy? Sir Alex, help me out.
He'd help me out.
We got Yatesy from Forest.
Aye.
Who else we got?
Fergie,
very football heavy, and
Jennifer Lawrence.
Ah, clearly an enthusiastic, passionate carper lady.
Who doesn't like Jennifer Lawrence?
yeah, fair play. Good call, nice. One angler to catch a carp to save your life.
Oh, God.
Do not say Luke Vardy.
No chance.
Jamie Vardy, more like.
I'll be gone, mate. No chance. Probably Levy.
Yeah,
there's a few that I'd put me. I would genuinely. I'd be happy.
You pick one, so don't.
Yeah, I'd pick Levy. Yeah.
Don't try and get out of it. It's Levy. Good. Hardest man in angling. Who's the hardest? You've been out with a few.
Hardest.
Toughest. Yeah.
Toughest.
I'm not talking any other hard, mate. Don't know what you've been doing.
No. Hardest. What do you term as hardest?
What, who'd you fancy in a fight? A Royal Rumble, old school WWF style.
Jay Cater.
Yeah, he's a big old
Absolutely,
unit,
yeah. I'm taking Jay, yeah. Want him on your team.
He's slow or is he quite quick?
Mate, you want him on your team.
Yeah, he's a big old lump, isn't he? I'll give you that. Best angler at RidgeMonkey?
Oh, God, you've put me on spot now.
Well, it's got to be, hasn't it?
Again, what do you determine as best?
Oh, who's the best angler at RidgeMonkey? All round, versatile, can do everything, would catch him.
Levy and Randall, they would be the two.
Well, you can't pick two.
I know, but
I can't. Angler.
I can't.
You're going to say Levy twice in one set of
questions? Nah, I'd go Randall. Oh. I know you stitched me up, but now you've told me I can't say that.
Enjoy your future shoots, boy.
Sick on it.
History carp you wish you'd caught?
Got to no.
Because he's still going.
No, to be fair, those Yateley fish from back in the day were something else, weren't they?
Which one would you take?
Heather.
Would you?
Yeah, just something. Yeah.
Straight for the big one. Biggest regret?
Oh, God.
He's not happy with these on the spot ones. I thought you'd be a lot more sort of.
No, can we go back to the?
You're very stressed out, aren't you? What you came back to?
Go back to the other ones.
What, the set ones?
Yeah. The interview. Biggest regret. I don't regret anything.
Oh, it's got to be a hairdo at some point. You regret.
Yeah, probably. I'll tell you what I do regret.
Go on, here we go.
Tell you what I do regret. The first tactics that comes out, I've let myself go, and it weren't until I looked on camera.
Oh, you were saying this. I've gone and bought a meal deal from Tesco's, right? I'm going to give him some background. I've gone and brought him a meal deal from Tesco's. He straight out said to me, crisps, I'm cutting back. I've seen a video yesterday.
Honestly, this first tactic series, I mean, it was last summer. I've worked out a bit now, you know what I mean? But I was in bad shape. I'd let myself, lockdown ×2. It was bad. And the way that the film was shot was side camera angles that didn't do me any favours either in the clothing that I was wearing. So get the excuses out now. That's the biggest regret I've got, is letting myself get to that point and then having to go on camera.
Some would say he's in absolute prime pre-spawning condition.
Yeah.
Nah, mate. I bet it ain't that bad. It's just you being hypercritical.
It's bad.
Okay, we'll let you off with that. Here's one. Nottingham Forest relegated or a UK PB? Which one are you taking? Flip of a coin. What are you having?
What, that I'd rather have?
Well,
I don't want Forest relegated, do I?
Why not? It's definitely going to happen.
I'm not going to say, I want Forest relegated.
They might win something in the Championship.
Who do you support?
Leicester, don't I, mate? We're going back up, didn't we? We've won the league, lad.
I won't even let you in the house.
We've won the league, mate.
God, don't we know about it? Where are you now?
Premier League. I don't know if you knew, but we won the Premier League.
Championship.
We're actually winning the Championship with 10 points clear at this current point.
You will be.
It's called winning something like that.
Right. I'd take the UK PB because I don't want Forest to get relegated.
No, as in which one would you... So you'd want... If you took the PB, Forest to getting relegated.
So the question should have been Forest to stay up. So Mr. Interviewer has got it wrong.
Forest to stay up or a UK PB?
Forest to stay up.
Would you keep them and not have your PB?
No. I'd like...
What if I change PB to Gutsy?
Right, okay.
You'd have Gutsy, wouldn't you?
No, I want no Forest.
You would? No. About it.
No, I'll take both. No, Forest to stay up.
Final question, mate. Night out on the bank or a night in with the missus?
Divorce written all over it.
No, it's not. Is she going to listen to this?
Probably.
Will she? You could do both at Old Mill, couldn't you?
Nah, on the bank.
Without moving his lips.
I didn't say it.
You're an absolute star. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Loz, you've been an absolute star, mate. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate.